across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, it's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell. This is the Evening Exchange on Talk, and we're asking the question about whether Andy Burnham's plan for the jobs for the future will actually work. We'll speak to a podcaster, a very successful one, who has interviewed him today. We'll find out what the Prime Minister is saying and what Jimmy McLaughlin, who is an expert on jobs and indeed advised number 10 on jobs at one stage, thinks of the plan. We've heard it a number of times before from a number of different Prime Ministers, or a version of it anyway. Will this one work? What do you think? 0344 499 1000. And the good news is WhatsApps are working again this evening. That's all back, so thanks to the engineers behind the scenes there. We'll talk as well about Zach Polanski. The idea is that the London Assembly would censure him over this very controversial Instagram post that he put out about Nigel Farage, a guillotine involved in that. We talked about it quite a lot last night, and that has been something that has dominated a lot of political coverage today. Also a really uplifting, very sad, but nonetheless beautiful video from a Commonwealth Games swimmer as well, who has a brain tumour and is terminally ill. Came 7th in the race today and spoke very, very movingly about the fact that he wants there to be proper scanning. We'll talk as well to a young person who will be interested in these apprenticeships. We'll talk about Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary. He's accused the French Navy of firing shots near him in the Channel. Very dramatic on that as well. So much to discuss, and I want you to be part of the conversation as well. 0344 499 1000 is the main number. That's the number for calls. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or a WhatsApp voice note if you want, as well as ringing me on that main number, 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Thanks for your company here on the Evening Exchange on Talk. So Jimmy McLaughlin has a very, very good podcast called Jimmy's Jobs for the Future. He has interviewed the Prime Minister today on these jobs for the future, on these apprenticeships. The idea that Andy Burnham has that we should be as respectful as a hard hat as a university degree. Let's just see a little bit of what the Prime Minister told Jimmy earlier today.
We are only on week 2, but I wanted to get stuck into this straight away. I just don't feel we've got an education system that offers a path for everybody. It's focused on the university route, and that's great for those who want to go on that route. But there's a lot of young people who are looking for something different, and school often isn't giving them that something different. So it is a huge priority for me. And when you've been the mayor of a big city region like Greater Manchester, you just see how our economy can't function if you have an education system that doesn't work to support all parts of the economy, get all young people engaged. So it's a passion of mine, and it's great to be in a position now to really pull the levers to fix it.
We'll come back to that in a second. I also just want to remind you of what Zia Youssef has said, the Home Affairs spokesman for Reform UK, on this controversy in regard to Zach Polanski. Zach Polanski putting out an Instagram post, collaborating on it, about someone who was talking about Nigel Farage and a guillotine. Now we have Zia Youssef who's talked about this. Let's see the clip of that.
The leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, has posted to his Instagram a photo of a man calling for the beheading of Nigel Farage. This comes just over 2 weeks after our dear friend Anne Widdecombe was brutally murdered in her home in what the police say they believe to be a targeted attack.
There was quite a spirited debate between the broadcaster and indeed biographer of Nigel Farage, Michael Crick, and me last night. This is just a little clip of how we discussed it. What do you make of this?
I think you're overreacting, Peter.
The leader of a political party, Michael.
Well, I know what it is.
Puts out, OK, why am I overreacting?
Well, the in politics, people often use metaphors, refer to killing people off or decapitation strategies. You remember in
with the guillotine?
No, hang on. Well, we don't actually have. I doubt whether there is a single guillotine in this country, right? If it had been a knife or a gun, I mean, it is ill. You're right. It's tasteless. I wouldn't have done it. I certainly wouldn't have retweeted it or anything like that. And it is ill-judged. But we don't have guillotines in this country. It isn't a picture of Nigel Farage in the guillotine. I think what it refers to is we're going to kill you politically. I mean, maybe I've got it wrong, but I do think that sometimes we do overreact to these things, and I can see why Farage has seized on it. And it's interesting that I don't think he's referred this gentleman on the screen or referred this incident to the police. Maybe he has. But I think we ought to put this in perspective. And there are some terrible things that people do on social media. But I think in the circumstances, I mean, if it was France, for instance, where they do have the guillotine, or they used to until quite recently, it might be a different matter. And if it was a knife or a gun, it would be a different matter,
Michael, I think you're completely wrong on this, and I think you've completely misjudged this. That was our discussion last night. What do you think of that? We'll continue that debate throughout the programme, 0344 499 1000. But I want to speak to Jimmy McLaughlin, OBE. He is the host of Jimmy's Jobs for the Future now. Jimmy, thanks for joining me on the programme this evening. You've had quite a busy day. What were your impressions of the Prime Minister and this policy?
Well, look, I feel the Prime Minister is clearly enjoying the job, which is the first time we've seen a Prime Minister enjoy it in quite a number of years. And I think that optimism does make a bit of a difference when it comes to the economy and so on. And he's clearly very passionate about this, to be making this announcement around education and around the 1 million unemployed people we have between the ages of 18 to 24 so early in his premiership, I think is an indication of how seriously he's going to take this. And he's also done a lot in Manchester with what he calls the MBAC, which is all about having different regions doing different skills and training people in different areas, which is something quite new in this debate, because you were right earlier of what you're saying. He's not the first politician to say that we need to take technical skills more seriously and so on. But there is a bit more of a plan and an idea behind how this might happen this time.
Because we've had, as you say, we've had Philip Hammond in the 2017 budget talking about this. Boris Johnson said technical education is not given the respect it deserves, but today I'm changing all of that, pulling one of the biggest levers we have to change the country. Rishi Sunak in 2023 announced plans for a British baccalaureate. We had Keir Starmer, we're putting technical education back where it belongs, 2025. I mean, do you think it'll work this time?
Well, a lot of these things comes down to status, right? And how do we view certain jobs as a society? And all of those people that you mentioned there are very highly educated, have lots of post-school education. So I think there is a bit of a challenge around this. And it was quite interesting sort of asking Andy Burnham today whether he would still study English literature today. He said that he would actually, which I thought was interesting. So there is a challenge around, like, how do you really elevate these professions amongst society? You saw quite a big change in COVID, I think, when it came to the NHS and workers being much more held in higher regard, the clapping out of the doors at 8 p.m. and so on. So there are things, but it's difficult for government to kind of actually build that status change, but it's definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
And I do think in an AI world where a lot more of these sort of white collars, as both you and I are wearing, as these professions perhaps struggle with what AI is going to bring in and how that's going to change work, I do think some of these more technical skills are going to be really important.
Let's just play a couple of clips from your interview with the Prime Minister. First on whether he would study for an English degree now. This is what went on between Jimmy's conversation with the Prime Minister earlier today.
Again, back to my dad, he tried to talk me out of it. You know, he said, what are you going to do with an English degree? But I always pointed him to a poem by Tony Harrison, the Yorkshire poet, because he begins it with a quote from Arthur Scargill, of all people. The quote says this: "My father reads the dictionary every day. He says your life depends upon your power to master words." And I lent on that as a young man to justify my degree choice. But I always come back to it because I think an ability to kind of use words, use the power of words, I think it's something that is beneficial in any walk of life.
And as Jimmy mentioned there, AI was talked about in the interview as well. Let's hear a bit of what the Prime Minister said to Jimmy about that.
I think as well with AI, those social capital and social networks become more important. How else do you think AI will sort of change our economy more broadly? Do you think we'll have AGI by 2029, the time of the next election potentially?
Well, we have to take that issue really seriously. I came in as Mayor of Greater Manchester in 2017, and at the time, all I was hearing was coding. We need more coding courses, and we put a lot of effort into that. And now I'm told, almost a decade on, that that's almost been made redundant by AI, or not completely, but in large part. So that is something of a sort of salutary lesson, I think, there. It's going to change the workplace for sure. And it's why, at the request of the trade unions and business voices, I've created a ministerial post focused on the future of work, because it's going to, if that level of change can happen in a decade, it's probably going to accelerate. And some of these changes could come at us more quickly than we realise.
Jimmy, what did you think of what the Prime Minister said there, and what do you think about AI in the future? Should young people be worried about it, especially, I mean, we all know people just graduating from university or coming out of school, we'll be speaking to one of them a bit later on in the programme, who are deciding what their future path is, and it's hard to know, isn't it?
It is very difficult to know, because he makes a really good point there about coding. Coding has enormously changed in the last 10 years. But to marry his other point of what he was saying before, English and communication as kind of the meta skill that sits at the heart of all of this, I think is so important, because, mathematics is a lot easier with a calculator, but it doesn't make you a brilliant mathematician. And again, if you're going to be using AI, whether you're writing or talking to it in voice, what you say is going to be really important. So actually, that is a fundamental skill which is going to be required. And I think jobs change all the time, and we underestimate sometimes how much our own jobs have changed. If your viewers and listeners think about it, their jobs have probably changed quite a lot in the last 10 years in terms of all the tools that they use and so on. So I think it's really important not to lose sight of this. We still need to be teaching the kind of foundational skills that matter. If you think about it, in the United Kingdom, 7 in every 8 jobs are in the private sector. Now, the private sector's job, business's job, is to research products, develop products, take those products to market them to people, and then sell them. Those jobs are all going to still exist. Nobody is in doubt about that. But the tools that are used at every single stage of the way on that are going to change, and they're going to change a lot. There's no doubt about that.
And just briefly, Jimmy, how did you find the Prime Minister? What were your impressions of him as a man?
Well, he was very relaxed, and he clearly is enjoying the job. I think he is really passionate about this. He's been in politics a long time. He's a good communicator. There's obviously been a lot of coverage of his kind of socials side of things, but I also think he does do quite well in these long form interviews. He knows a lot about what he thinks, and it was very interesting to talk to him about it.
Okay, and your podcast is called Jimmy's Jobs for the Future, and people can look that up and listen to it. I know it's you don't need me to promote it. It's been a very, very popular podcast. And if you're Googling Jimmy, obviously your surname Jimmy is spelled McLouglin. That's correct, isn't it?
That is correct.
Excellent. Good to clarify that. Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate you joining us on the programme this evening on the Evening Exchange. Let's go now to the former Welfare Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, Baroness Coffey, Therese Coffey. Therese, from what you've heard of what the Prime Minister's saying here, do you think that this can help the welfare bill, that this can help get young people off welfare and back into work? What's your impression?
Well, I actually think he's come up with the wrong analysis. Our education's actually improved in the last 15 years. And, candidly, this is all about what we can do to try and help people get into work, but also make sure that they don't have that life. So I share that outcome that he's after, but trying to rip up the education system is not sensible. What I think is fair to say is that some of the adjustments he's recommending, like more local engagement, more local use of the mayor to work with employers alongside schools, that is important. There have been plenty of times when I've had to tackle DfE because a course hadn't been agreed at national level, which actually our local colleges needed. So there is that balance that needs to be struck there. But trying to suggest that the improvements made haven't actually been beneficial to young people, I think is wrong.
It's also a big story today about extra benefits handed to parents of apprentices. Do you think that's fair?
Well, it is a bit of an odd situation, and we haven't been told exactly how many families they're thinking of. It does feel odd that somebody who goes out to work, to earn, will be bringing home income, that they should be getting more money for the parents, or that the parents would discourage them from doing that. But people will make certain judgments, I think, based on cash. So I would not do this myself, but I hope that it's done as a trial, and then we can see quite quickly what the real motives are for why parents would stop their children actually getting a job.
And as someone who's been a health secretary as well as a welfare secretary, when you look at social care, I mean, you have an almost unique perspective on social care in this country. When you hear what Andy Burnham is saying about that he wants to change it, he says, as quickly as he can. Is it too big to do in 3 years? Does the political capital exist to do it?
Well, I would say that every time people have tried this before without significant extra funding, then it's gone awry. And if we're back to the death tax of 16 years ago, that would not be the right thing to do. What I think is fair to say is that actually one of the growth areas in terms of jobs is about health and social care. And that's where we should be focusing a lot of the young people who are currently not working. But let's be candid about this. You have to have drive to make this happen. Frankly, when I left, I had the lowest NEETs in my time at DWP and since records began in 2021, and the lowest unemployment record since '74. And it's not just all of a sudden this has happened. Unfortunately, jobs are drying up because employers don't have confidence.
So how do we tackle the NEETs issue? I'm sure you're going to talk about the confidence of employers, as you just have, particularly in regard to things like how expensive it is with national insurance contributions too.
Well, that's right. And I think some of the changes that are still to be enacted through the Employment Rights Act, I think they should look at that again, about how quickly they do any of that. For what it's worth, I recently praised Pat McFadden for managing to get certain kind of funding out of the Treasury under what's called making sure that the jobs that there was a bonus for being created were going to get some support. But that really pays less, or is less than the amount of costs that are being added onto employers in the first place. So a couple of things, I think, is one, continue to have the drive in job centres right across the country, particularly focusing on young people, but also I haven't seen the details of what's coming through as social care. There are plenty of vacancies still in this country, and that's where we need to focus for the people who haven't had a job in quite a long time.
You say focus on that, and I totally agree with you. We need to get people back to work, but we had that story we were talking about on the programme yesterday for young people at the very start of their career. If you have anxiety, depression, ADHD, and I'm not minimising those conditions at all, but we spoke to a young person last night who said that, you know, she works 12 hours a week at a fast food restaurant as well as studying. This is the summer, so she's doing 40 hours a week there, and still there are people she knows who sit at home who, in her view, don't have these conditions and are abusing the system and take home more than she does. That is something that we need to tackle. There was an attempt to tackle it by one of your predecessors, Ian Duncan Smith, and that didn't quite work out the way it should have, perhaps. There are perverse incentives within the system already, aren't there, Therese?
Well, there can be, that's true, but that's why some of the recent things put in place by the government, they're now extending the minimum PIP award to 4 years. That's very rare currently. So it's things like that which the government may talk the talk, but is not delivering in terms of actual helping people and candidly putting more conditions on that. So there's a variety of things that could be considered. Of course, the Keir Starmer government tried certain things. I actually thought some of what they attempted was pretty cruel. So I'm not surprised that Labour MPs rejected that.
What was cruel, do you think?
Oh, it was just this blanket way of approaching people under a certain age. What was the right thing that they considered doing was particularly focusing on people with anxiety, with ADHD, and perhaps considering not certainly allowing the enhanced payment for disability for that. But one of the best tonics for anxiety is actually being with other people. And one of the best prescriptions that doctors could ever give is not to sign them off for work, but to actually sign them to getting and finding a job with the extra support that's needed. This combination of whether it's social care costs, social care shortage of people, that's one of the biggest increases in migrant workers coming into the country, but also working with the NHS to reduce and improve the health support, as opposed to DWP spends a lot of money actually paying for mental health support. It doesn't come from the NHS, or it might do, but they buy it.
Yes.
And there's the whole activity there where if there's one thing I hope the Milburn Review does is bang heads together. There's nothing new in the Milburn Review, but it's the banging of heads that we need to really do.
Therese, thank you very much indeed. That's Baroness Coffey there, the former Welfare Secretary, former Health Secretary, former Deputy Prime Minister. Many strings to her bow now in the House of Lords, giving us her analysis of that. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Both what you heard from the Prime Minister, from Jimmy McLaughlin and from Therese Coffey. Thanks to Phil in Portsmouth, who's been in touch and says, I think this whole university talk about running up massive bills with no jobs prospect after is true. It happens around the world. Is exactly the subject Charlie Kirk used to talk about. He never went to university and look how smart he turned out. It's just a scheme to get people into massive debt. Sally says, at this rate, you'll earn more in benefits tax-free than you do working. That happens already. Already the case in some instances, as Sally correctly says. Will these kids have to repay this £4,500, ironically paid out of taxpayers' money, back if they drop out? Andrew says, in Andy Burnham, we used to have a system like the one he's proposing. We call them grammar schools and technical high schools. Becca says, the T-shirt didn't say about the beheading of Nigel Farage. It's a song quote. It's distasteful, but not a police matter. And Dave in New Zealand says, regarding a death tax, I can see how this will develop if you have a £300,000 house and you can't pay the £30 death tax. So the council, government, others will compulsorily purchase the house at their valuation. Cheap houses for migrant occupancy, other UK citizens push further down the ladder into further oppression. Whatever you think, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let me know your thoughts. We'll go to the debate desk next. Sebastian Salek will be with us, as will Simeon Lee, making a return to the debate desk. It'll be great to hear from both of them, and I want your views too. Stay with us here on Talk.
She says I look like Andy Burnham, so she's created a TikTok account. I'm Andy Burnham. Who have you been told in the past you look like?
I think compared to me, those two are heavyweight champions. I wouldn't put myself in such a muscular context. But Charles Hawtrey, I think, was one of the funniest actors. I loved his appearances in the Carry On films.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. You can give me a shout on 0344 499 1000. We'll get to more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes in a minute or two. But I want to go straight to the debate desk. Simeon Lee is with me, policy analyst at Taxpayers Alliance. You're very welcome back to the debate desk. How are you doing?
Great to be back.
Great to see you, Simeon. And Sebastian Salek, former Labour councillor and political commentator. Great to see you. How are you doing?
Good to see you. Very well.
Good stuff. So, big news today from Andy Burnham. He wants to change the education system. Let's just hear a little clip from Andy Burnham. He was talking to Jimmy McLaughlin, who we had on a little bit earlier on. Jimmy McLaughlin does a big podcast called Jimmy's Jobs for the Future, which I'd highly recommend after 10 o'clock this evening, obviously. Let's just hear a little bit about what the Prime Minister has been saying to Jimmy today.
We are only on week 2, but I wanted to get stuck into this straight away. I just don't feel we've got an education system that offers a path for everybody. It's focused on the university route, and that's great for those who want to go on that route. But there's a lot of young people who are looking for something different. and school often isn't giving them that something different. So it is a huge priority for me. And when you've been the mayor of a big city region like Greater Manchester, you just see how our economy can't function if you have an education system that doesn't, work to support all parts of the economy, get all young people engaged. So it's a passion of mine, and it's great to be in a position now to really pull the levers to fix it.
Well, that was the Prime Minister speaking to the Jimmy's Jobs for the Future podcast, which is available now. Sebastian, what do you make of this policy from Andy Burnham? It's been tried by many politicians before. We've heard about it since 2017. Philip Hammond talked about it in the budget. We've heard from Rishi Sunak. We've heard from Boris Johnson. Is this different? Will it work, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's inching towards this kind of overcorrection we saw back when the polytechnics were abolished and we saw polytechnic education merge with universities, which I think was a great shame. The big challenge with this is making these kinds of positions or these kinds of subjects desirable. Ask any middle-class parent what they think about apprenticeships and technical education. They'll tell you it's brilliant whilst furiously signing up their child with an Oxbridge tutor. We have to make sure that they want this as well. It's the only way to lift all the boats. So that's the challenge. It's a comms issue more than anything.
The interesting thing I find, and I often cite this, is I have a friend who did a very good degree. He got a bachelor's degree in classics, he got a master's degree in classics, got a PhD in classics. He teaches at the University of Manchester. He earns about £50,000 a year, which is a very successful and very good salary. My plumber, my friend Rob, who's a plumber, earns more than twice that. He came into, before he became my friend, gave me mates rates. He came into my flat, was in my bathroom for 7 minutes and charged me £92. Who's the smart one?
Yeah. No, that's very true. And I mean, I think amid the age of AI, you are going to see a lot of people move in that direction and think, what are the jobs that AI can't do?
AI-proof jobs, essentially.
Exactly.
Shumian, what's your perspective on this?
Well, I think it's pretty striking that there aren't really any new ideas in this. So this has, as you mentioned, been tried before under the previous government. I don't know if people can remember the T-levels.
T-levels, yeah, V-levels as well, vocational levels, yeah.
And then Rishi Sunak came up with the Advanced British Standard, another thing that sort of fizzled out. So, I think that the problem is that government cannot micromanage the labour supply, right? So if you look at what's been proposed, there's a lot of buzzwords being thrown around like AI. So things like AI, that will be outdated in about 6 months as the economy changes, incredibly
rapidly. It's interesting you mentioned this because the Prime Minister actually mentioned this to Jimmy McLaughlin and said 10 years ago every kid was told get coding, code and learn how to code. That's how you're going to future-proof yourself. AI does that all now.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And in some cases, the students know more than the teachers. And certainly, I think young people today know a lot more than the government when it comes to things like AI. So, what really matters in terms of getting people into work and helping the sort of crisis that we have amongst young people not being in work is creating the sort of conditions for businesses to thrive. And that's what will create jobs, and the jobs will naturally follow from that. And what that involves is, reducing the rate of taxation, which we've seen record levels, and reforming the welfare system so that it actually pays for people to be in work rather than being on welfare. Those are going to be hugely controversial. Those are the things that require political capital. And unfortunately, a lot of the prime ministers have tried to take the easy way out by tinkering with the education system instead of tackling the major issues that actually result in high unemployment.
A related issue to this, front page of the Times yesterday, was about people who are on benefits for anxiety, depression, etc., taking home more if they are teenagers and working the maximum that you can work. They're taking home more than people who can work the maximum you work as a teenager. We also have a story today from the Telegraph about families on universal credit to receive £4,500 a year as part of plans to tackle youth unemployment. Ministers say the new bursaries are part of plans for 50,000 new apprenticeships and stop school leavers falling into your life on benefits. Is this a good investment, this cash, do you think?
Look, I think a lot of the time what Labour looks to be doing is just throwing money at every single problem, right? Paying people in order to get jobs. It's about as silly as paying people to send, paying parents to send their kids to school.
Disincentives, isn't it? If you're on benefits and you're offered an apprenticeship but you're going to lose out financially, you're obviously not going to take that apprenticeship. So it's about evening it out so that it's a fair deal for you.
Well, I 100% agree that benefits should not pay more than work, but the solution there is not to pay people to get into work. Essentially, what we're going to have is a system where we pay you if you're in work and we pay you when you're out of work. We cannot solve every problem by just getting taxpayers to pay people.
Let's talk about this with, well, Marish in Durham has sent me a very interesting message on this. He says, "Evening, Peter. Consistently excellent shows, mate. Great stuff." Very kind, thank you. "As you might recall, I am currently working on a thesis to reconstruct the national curriculum in England at Key Stage 4. Leaving financial incentives aside, I want to say that actually Andy Burnham's proposal educationally is much needed, and I will be forwarding my writing on taxonomical verb structures used in creating lesson objectives in secondary subjects. This would, I believe, help the teachers and learners to become more open-ended while addressing the instructional and strongly framed curriculum currently is geared far too much to qualificationism and not enough to subjectivism and socialisationism." Hope this helps, says Marush in Durham. Lots of isms in there. I feel Maureen Lippin could be on this programme. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Carl in Richmond says, "I went to uni in the late 80s and was lucky enough to get a grant, and my parents helped where they could. For some reason, it made me feel lucky and willing to study. However, I did nothing with the degree afterwards. I worked as a salesperson for approximately 15 years, then worked for myself, founding and running a global lighting business. I employed my son as an apprentice and made him learn all departments from cleaning to project management and import-export. He is now very successful, but it helped having his apprenticeship half paid by the government. I've since sold that business and built a large legal cannabis cultivation and processing facility in Colombia. But what we need is a pathway to make young people think and help them understand there's nothing they cannot achieve, but it takes a real education." If you were going back now, Sebastian, would you still go down the academic degree route, or would you be tempted by these apprenticeships?
I would go to university all over again, and I was lucky I got on the slightly lower fees before they tripled. I'd probably pay triple, to be honest, because I think the value for money...
Still think it's worth it?
The value for money is it's not just in what you learn, it's how you think, but it's also the network. I'm at an age now, 34, my friends' careers are starting to blossom in all sorts of industries. I'm looking around thinking, I know a lot of quite important people now, and that is going to become even more valuable as I go on. If you don't enter an institution like that, you don't get that.
Shimin?
Well, I think the numbers have come out, and the numbers are that about a quarter to a fifth, I think, of people who go to university are actually financially worse off for having gone, meaning that they would have actually been better off had they not gone to university. I think it's the facts. The numbers just show that.
I mean, it's not people in general. Is there a cohort of people we need to say, look, this degree isn't worth it? I mean, I did history and politics, which is very relevant to this, to what I do now, but I'm not sure my, knowledge of 18th century American history is actually, it did a lot of American history, it's not very much of it, which is great, and it doesn't, isn't directly relevant to what I do now, but it was an interesting thing to do for a few years. Would I have been better becoming a plumber?
Well, I think part of the issue is that universities are trying to sell a lot of these courses that don't actually deliver value for money for students. So if you look at some of the graduate outcomes, they're pretty abysmal. They're worse than or close to minimum wage, and that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
A degree should add value rather than take it away.
Thank you to Penny in Essex. He says, "Good evening, Peter." Good evening, Penny. "In the 1950s, we had an education system where if you were academically inclined, you went to grammar school. If you're not, you went to a secondary modern school, which educated you towards having a trade." Another person says, "I think it's cruel to raise the hopes of so many youngsters talking about changing education. It won't change. Schools have been subsumed by left-wing ideology, and many come out with nothing useful. We had a technical college in our city recently, which appears to have closed. Where's the money coming from?" And Graham says, "What does an English graduate from Cambridge know about technical colleges and hard-hat jobs?" says Graham in Bushy. Well, you may well ask that question, but I mean, I've never been to Iraq, but I've plenty of opinions about it. Ernie's been in touch about Michael Crick. This controversy over Zach Polanski continues. We're hoping to speak to Reform UK later on in the programme about it, because at the London Assembly they want to censure Zach Polanski. I've just had that confirmed. We will be speaking to one of their representatives from Reform UK a little bit later on. Ernie says, "Hi Peter, Michael Crick was so wrong when he said if it was a knife or a gun that would be bad, but it was a guillotine and there are no guillotines in Britain. The reason it was a guillotine was because the sick individual who had ever thought up the T-shirt wanted to show Farage being beheaded, but knew they would be arrested on the spot if he put up a picture of that. It was a sneaky way of getting his thoughts over. It was despicable," says Ernie. Elisa in Chelmsford has been in touch about this as well with a voice note. Let's hear what she has to say about this.
Peter, I'd like to say that I'm shocked by Michael Crick's response to that dreadful, insightful image, but I'm not shocked. It's the kind of attitude I expect from him. I think it's truly disgusting and irresponsible of anyone to react to that photo the way he's done. At this time, when there is so much danger and Nigel Farage has had so much death threats, etc., it's appalling, absolutely appalling.
Thank you for that, Elisa. We'll talk a little bit about that and quite a number of other issues on the debate desk in just a moment. Sebastian and Shimeon are staying with me. I'd love to hear your views too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Paul from London, who says, come on, Peter, let's not be naive. Interviewing the Prime Minister gave him an easy ride. It guarantees another interview down the line. It's still the useless Labour Party. Well, Paul, I mean, it's always the problem when you interview these politicians, because you want to go hard on them, you want to get the proper answers out of them, but you also want them, you know, they're a fact of life. He's going to be the Prime Minister for, you know, could be months. Richard in Leicester says there will be no new jobs. Artificial intelligence and Chinese robots are the future. People are not needed anymore, says Richard in Leicester. Elle has been in touch and says, my brother and sister left school at the age of 15. Despite having no qualifications, they did fairly mediocre jobs to start with, but eventually each of them started their own businesses, and now they're both financially very comfortable. I, on the other hand, stayed on to do A-levels and further education, and I'm nowhere near as comfortably well off as they are. I do wonder if teenagers were not forced to stay on at school, they might be motivated to work instead. Win-win for all, methinks. My children pursued academic careers and are now saddled with horrendous debts. This makes me so angry. We'll keep your thoughts coming in, calls, text, tweets, voice notes, 0344 499 1000. I want to talk about another story on the debate desk now, and that is about this pro-Palestinian protester who scaled Big Ben, or quite literally, more accurately, the Elizabeth Tower, and he has avoided jail over poor eyesight. He cost the taxpayer something like £92,000 because what happened was that there were safety measures to try to take away his audience. Police officers shut down Bridge Street, the primary junction next to the House of Parliament, and Westminster Bridge, cut off pedestrian access to Parliament Square and set out cordons on adjacent streets as well. Transport for London lost an estimated £25,000 in bus fares as diversions were put in place and routes curtailed, while at one point Day's supporters tried to outblock the movement of a fire engine. More than 2,500 parliamentary tours also had to be cancelled at a cost of £67,000. I should say in a few minutes, speaking of Parliament, we're talking to the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, who is in transit. He was on a small boat today, and there were live shots fired by the French. We're going to talk to him in a few seconds, but back to this story. Daniel Day was given a suspended sentence for costing the taxpayer £92,000. What do you make of this, Sebastian?
Yeah, well, clearly a very silly thing to do, wasn't it? I mean, look, on the sentence, we're talking about not using our degrees, going to dust off my residual legal knowledge here. Lots of mitigating factors if you look at it. No serious injury to anybody, no previous convictions. He pleaded guilty to one of the counts, so lots of things to suggest that he should have his sentence reduced, and that's what the judge has decided here. So it seems relatively fair to me.
Do you think it's fair?
No, I think it's an outrageous story. I couldn't believe my eyes when I read it. Right, it's a failure at every single level. I walk past Westminster every single day on the way to work, and you see all kinds of fences, police, cameras, guardhouses there. How in the world did they not prevent this person from just climbing the building? It is outrageous. And, you know, the second level of failure is by the judge to give him such a terribly lenient sentence. I mean, the judge himself said that he showed zero remorse. And in fact, you know...
Yes, he says the judge found Day, the offender, had little insight into your offending or any real remorse. He said the strong personal mitigation was his failing eyesight as well. Do you think he should have had mitigation for his failing eyesight?
I mean, it's ridiculous how the judge has basically treated him like a child, you know, a naughty
He's also
child.
said it's good to see people having strong principles, but it doesn't give a licence to break the law. But there aren't going to be too many people who say, well, the guy got a suspended sentence for, you know, a few months and it's all fine. It's not going to discourage people from doing this, is it?
No, but not every sentence has to be a head on a stick. You get some that clearly are that, and they're slightly political, but I don't think this is one of them. I mean, if you're a judge, your job is to look at the facts in front of you, look at the sentencing guidelines and try to find a match, and that's exactly what the judge has done here.
Final word from Shimian.
I mean, this just sends the message that essentially you can do what you want without any real consequences, and that's going to cost the taxpayer even more when the next person tries this ridiculous stunt.
Chris in Brighton has been in touch about the education system as well. Loads of people getting in touch about this, and please do send your messages through, and about the guy who scaled the Elizabeth Tower, Big Ben, as well. Chris says, you seem to think that the benefit of an education system for the individual should be seen purely in financial terms. The size of the wage packet. Really? Is that all education means to you? How shallow and frankly sad. What about becoming a better, more rounded person, a person more capable of critical thought? Perhaps a person who sees the world has a deeper meaning than the rat race. The world would be awful. It was just full of shallow careerists. Chris, I get that, and I think the three of us get that, and actually the jobs all three of us do are, I think we all know quite a number of people, I think all three of us went to university, all three of us went to university, earn a heck of a lot more money than perhaps we do in banking and finance and law and all those kind of things, and, you know, good for them. But I must say, you know, it suited me. But also, if you're not interested in books, if you don't want to do French to GCSE, if you don't want to do geography, which is, to my mind, a useless subject anyway, I mean, you should have an alternative. You should be able to say, right, I'm more practically based. And we shouldn't look down our nose at those people. We shouldn't say, well, that person has A levels and that person doesn't, that person has a degree and that person doesn't. You know, there are loads of ways to succeed in life, I think. We'll talk to Chris Philp, hopefully, in just a second. We're trying to get him on the line. He is in transit at the moment. He's the Shadow Home Secretary, and he has had quite the day today. We'll get reaction from Shimien and Sebastian on the debate desk as well. Both the S's on the DD. Stay with us.
She says I look like Andy Burnham, so she's created a TikTok account. I'm Andy Burnham. Who have you been told in the past you look like?
I think compared to me, those two are heavyweight champions. I wouldn't put myself in such a muscular context. But Charles Hawtrey, I think, was one of the funniest actors. I loved his appearances in the Carry On films.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we're on the debate desk, but we thought we'd take a little moment to speak to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. He's had quite a day today, extraordinary footage of him on a small boat in the Channel, and then shots happening from the French. Chris is with us now on the phone. Chris, thanks for joining us. Just talk us through what happened earlier on. Yeah, they say, the French Defence Staff say, French Navy units train regularly. Individual competent training is normal activity for a vessel in operations. The statutory signals required by international standards for this type of firing exercise were displayed and all safety protocols were followed. This exercise is unrelated to the presence of a British ship in the area, which was outside the range of the firing. The Flamant was not engaged in an operation to monitor migrant vessels. We also have a former senior border force official who has told The Guardian there are often exercises at sea involving the Royal or the French Navy. The shots are occasionally fired, usually using blanks. This may be nothing at all. What makes you convinced that they are in fact live rounds? And whether they were or whether they were not, you must have been pretty scared. Yeah, and we should say we have that footage on the screen right now, Chris. Was it scary? Chris, thank you very much indeed, and I hope the rest of whatever you're up to this evening is a lot safer than that. That is the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. This is an extraordinary development. What do you make of it, Simeon? Simeon Lee and Sebastian Salek are on the debate desk with me. What do you make of it, Simeon?
Well, this is just pure speculation on my part, but I sort of think that it might be intentional, not in the sense that it was targeting Chris Philp specifically, but probably a bunch of soldiers saw that some sort of interview was taking place and they wanted to disrupt it for whatever reason. You know, no offence to Chris Philp, but I'm not sure if French sailors necessarily know who the Shadow Home Secretary is. But, you know, I think what this demonstrates is that the French do have substantial capabilities in the Channel. And, you know, we shouldn't accept this excuse that they aren't able to stop the massive amount of small boats that are coming through. And we certainly shouldn't be relying on French goodwill, at the same time paying them £600 million in order to stop these boats. We have to have a strategy that doesn't rely on the goodwill of the French.
What do you make?
Let's look at the facts. It's recess. The Tories could do with a bit of press at the moment, and everybody loves it when you have a pop at the French. This is a perfect story for Chris Philp. I can completely see why he's doubling down on this.
I mean, he must have been scared.
Oh, yeah.
Live
would have been terrifying, yeah, I don't deny that. But to confect this story, you can see why he's trying to do it. I mean, I don't believe that that the Fifth Republic has any concern about Chris Philp. I don't think that they would shoot willy-nilly around a media interview either. It's just not what that country does. They have no political or diplomatic incentive to do that. So I believe the French on this one. I think it was just an exercise. But yeah, it must have been terrifying. You're out at sea and you hear gunshots.
Also, I mean, he talked about the job Shabana Mahmood recently given the job, extended in her job as Home Secretary. We're in a situation where he doesn't believe that is done correctly, and that Andy Burnham is talking about perhaps watering down her plans to make migrants wait 10 years for permanent settlement. What do you make of that, Simeon?
Well, I think that the fact that he's even considering it demonstrates the strength of Labour backbenchers. I think, in particular, the sort of exceptions that they're proposing for care workers would be particularly bad because they were allowed to bring over large numbers of dependents who will most likely be on benefits and substantial sums of money. Taxpayers are going to have to pay substantial sums of money in order to support them if they do retain indefinite leave to remain. So I think, you know, a compromise solution could be, this is what I've read, that they would be offered ILR without benefits. I think that would be a slight improvement on the current state of affairs. But I think that, you know, watering it down for care workers in particular,
ILR,
who are going to have...
leave to remain.
Yeah, exactly.
Indefinite leave to remain, yeah. OK. Sorry, Sebastian, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are two things here. First is these are care workers. I think there's a basic sense of fairness that people feel towards people who only a few years ago we were standing out on the street every Thursday and clapping for. It's the same people who come over here and look after us in our times of need. The other point is that we are doing this potentially retroactively. You're taking away this entitlement to people who did not move here on that basis. That strikes me as being deeply unfair as well. So I'm probably in the camp where Burnham is looking at the moment. He hasn't said anything for sure, but I think adjusting and creating a little carve-out might be the sensible thing to do here.
Do you think that Andy Burnham will lead this, or do you think Shabana Mahmood will? She's been reappointed Home Secretary. She's got rid of Mike Tapp, the Immigration Minister, but clearly there is a slightly different vision of Home Affairs from Andy Burnham as Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. What do you think?
Well, I think keeping her in the role has essentially means that, you know, Andy Burnham endorses what she's trying to do. Whether or not he can get that past the backbenchers, I think, is another question entirely. And I think that's going to be the key challenge, not just on this issue of ILR, but across the entire sort of welfare agenda. Whether or not, even if he does have some good ideas, can he get that past his Labour backbenchers? We saw that's what happened to Keir Starmer. He didn't manage to do it, and then, you know, now he's no longer Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a key challenge for Andy Burnham.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch. Pete in West Yorkshire says, regarding the £4,500 given to families on benefits if they get an apprenticeship, surely that money should go to the employer to help fund their salary. This helps employers wanting to take the apprenticeship on. Graham says, if it was a regular person who climbed the Elizabeth Tower for the hell of it, would he have received the same sentence? Simon says, my daughter went to university studying animal management over a 3-year period with the goal of becoming a veterinary assistant. Every job she's applied for, even trainee assistants, has required at least 2 years' experience. How can you require 2 years' experience for a trainee? That's astonishing. That was in 2023. She is now on a 1-day-a-week contract with extra work when offered, with co-op and debt that is increasing every day. It's very disheartening, says Simon in Manningtree. And a lovely message from Anna in Finland, who's enjoying the show and listens to the show every night. I better not read out your whole message, Anna, otherwise my head will explode. But it's a very, very nice message, and I appreciate it. Let's talk about a couple of other issues in the news as well, including Iran releasing a disturbing Kill Melania video threatening the First Lady and Baron Trump. We have a clip of that. Let's have a look.
اسناد به کار رفته در این ویدیو حاصل استخراج اطلاعات از چند شبکه امنیتی ناشناس و تصاویر ماهواره است. تیم حفاظت ملانیا ترامپ مستقل از رئیس جمهور آمریکا عمل می‌کند. سرویس مخفی نیز برای او به جای رمز سنتی مرغ مقلد شناسه اختصاصی میوز را به کار می‌برد. علاقه شدید ملانیا به داشتن ظاهری هماهنگ با استانداردهای مد به بزرگترین نقطه ضعف زندگیش تبدیل شده است. ملانیا علاقه خاصی به فروش
That is obviously in Persian, and it is a very, very disturbing video which is talking about killing Melania Trump and where to kill Melania, showing a mock-up of the First Lady's motorcade moving through the streets of New York City, calling on freedom fighters to take action against her. Freedom fighters, obviously, in inverted commas, they are terrorists. It concludes with an ominous threat against Trump's 20-year-old son, Baron Trump. Wait for us. Sebastian, what do you make of this?
Deeply, deeply chilling, isn't it? This one at arm's length. Do you remember we had the propaganda that came out with all the Lego figures?
Yes.
It was weirdly good,
yes.
And kind of got the job done. This is very far from that. So this has been put out by the Tasnim news agency, so not directly by the government, but we can assume that there's a link there because that news agency has historically been associated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So, yeah, more reason for Trump to be and his team to be on their toes. It's very, very scary.
I think, you know, this is pretty bad, but they've done a lot worse things with regards to, you know, actually killing US service members.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later on as well in the show about the Iranians who have been killed or are on death row essentially at the moment for rising up against the regime, just as they murdered 30,000 people a few months ago as well. So we will talk about that. Yeah.
I mean, it's a brutal regime, and I'm not sure what, you know, the United States can do about it, because they have been taking, you know, not just diplomatic action, but military action in the region. And, you know, we all want some sort of resolution to that issue.
Can I just apologise slightly? I think there was a slight problem with hearing Chris Philp on that interview. We fixed that technical problem due to the great work of our top team behind the glass who've done that. There was a minor technical issue, a gremlin in the system. We've now slayed said gremlin and all is well, and we will be able to hear phone calls again. Apologies. I hope, just to say with Chris Philp, it was very interesting what he was saying there about those shots going off, and I'm very sorry you couldn't hear it, so apologies for that. Sometimes these things happen with live broadcasting. We've had quite a number of stories of doom and gloom, and whilst this next next video I want to show you and play to you is something that involves someone who very sadly has a terminal disease. This is a really incredible, very powerful message from a powerful athlete living with the unimaginable. Archie Goodburn finished 7th in the men's 50-metre breaststroke final at Glasgow 2026. Of course, the Commonwealth Games are going on at the moment. This is 2 years after being told he had incurable brain cancer. He was interviewed after this. Just take a look and a listen to what Archie says.
My dream was to make the final, but you know, outside the pool I dream like I have a future where brain cancer isn't the biggest killer of those under 40, and to come home where the UK government established a national brain cancer lead to make that change, and I knew that there was so much more I wanted. Much before that change is made and that dream is completed than any of my personal goals in the pool. If I gave up every single thing that I've been faced with, every single hurdle. Because what families and young people are going through out there is really beyond the comprehension of many people out there, and certainly far harder than anything I've ever had to do as a world-class sportsman.
An incredible sportsman with an incredible message there. That's Archie Goodburn there, clearly very emotional after competing in the Commonwealth Games. I was very moved by that. I was sent that by a viewer, and I want to thank that viewer for sending that to me. It's been going around social media today. I don't see everything, and often there are very, very many contributions that viewers and listeners make, and highlighting what Archie Goodburn said there was just a wonderful thing. Just quick reaction from Shimian.
No, it's really inspiring stuff, and it shows us, you know, we shouldn't be limited by what we think we can't do, and we should live life to its fullest.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about families going through unfathomable things. I think we would say the same for him. Those of us who are fortunate to be healthy can't comprehend that, and it's really, really impressive stuff. He
is a really amazing person, and really interesting to hear from Archie Goodburn there. Tell me your thoughts on what he said. For the meantime, I just want to thank Sebastian Salek, former Labour councillor, political commentator, for joining me on the debate desk. Shimian Lee as well from the Taxpayers Alliance. Lovely to see you back in the debate desk. We'll see you again soon, policy analyst at the Taxpayers Alliance. What do you think of what they've said, of what you've heard on the debate desk and in the first hour of the programme? We have until 10 o'clock to have a discussion with one another about all these issues. What issues do you want to talk about? Because clearly the education issue is a very big one, and Penny says Burnham hasn't once mentioned immigration. A big issue for her is the biggest bugbear of many, many people, says Penny. I haven't heard that word escape his lips since he's become Prime Minister, so that's a very interesting point there as well. And Dawn in Chelmsford says, the more I see and hear of Andy Burnham, the more I think he's a snake oil salesman. His Labour Messiah Act will only take him so far before the wheels come off. Well, one of the things he certainly wants to talk about and do is to change education in this country. We're going to speak about how a similar system works in Germany. We've got a reporter from Der Spiegel in a second. We've got a student who turns 18 today who's going to talk about apprenticeship opportunities, and we've got the Chief Executive of the Construction Plant Hire Association, someone who knows all about the value of hard work and of manual jobs. And tell me what you think. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. This is the Evening Exchange. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Tuesday evening. We're going to talk about what Andy Burnham wants to do with education. Should we value the hard hat as much as we value the mortarboard? There is so much to talk about in this because there have been a number of governments at various times who said they're going to boost vocational education. They're going to make sure that people get the right education and then can make money from it, because there's a heck of a lot of graduates who cannot get jobs. We've been hearing examples of that already. So when you've put so much money into a university education, is it actually worth it? We're also hearing about families on universal credit to receive an extra £4,500 a year as part of these plans to tackle youth unemployment. We'll find out how it works in Germany, which is one of the systems that the Prime Minister wants to emulate. We'll hear from an 18-year-old who's turned 18 today, actually, and indeed we will hear from the Construction Plant Hire Association, people who know how it works when you do manual jobs. Loads to discuss in all of this. I'd love to hear from you as well. Whatever your experience, whatever job you've done, 0344 499 1000. We're also talking about Iran releasing a disturbing video threatening to kill the First Lady, and the Iran-US war latest. Netanyahu has been at the White House. We'll talk about immigration plans and tell you what Chris Philp has said to us as well. Some people couldn't hear it. We'll maybe get a clip or something of that to play out a little bit later on. And of course the reform controversy too, because Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party, has shared an image of Nigel Farage with someone wearing a t-shirt saying they want to guillotine him. There's lots to discuss in that because there's been now formal complaints and a police investigation in that. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, please do get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, or on Instagram it's at CardwellPeter. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, a WhatsApp voice note, as Elisa did earlier on as well. You can also give me a ring, all using the main number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Right then, Andy Burnham has been talking about changing education and what he wants to do in regard to vocational education. He has been talking about this on a podcast called Jimmy's Jobs for the Future. We interviewed the presenter of that earlier, Jimmy McLaughlin. Let's just hear what Andy Burnham has been saying.
We are only on week 2, but I wanted to get stuck into this straight away. I just don't feel we've got an education system that offers a path for everybody. It's focused on the university route, and that's great for those who want to go on that route. But there's a lot of young people who are looking for something different, and school often isn't giving them that something different. So it is a huge priority for me. And when you've been the mayor of a big city region like Greater Manchester, you just see how our economy can't function if you have an education system that doesn't work to support all parts of the economy, get all young people engaged. So it's a passion of mine, and it's great to be in a position now to really pull the levers to fix it.
Well, let's talk to Timo Lehmann, who's a reporter for Der Spiegel. We spoke to Timo last night, actually, about something completely different, but we thought it was so good we'd have him on again. So, Timo, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about how apprenticeships work in Germany.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I think I have a technical problem here.
That's okay. Can you tell us a little bit about how the education system and the apprenticeship system works in Germany? If you don't go to university, what are the options? Because that is what the Prime Minister here wants to copy.
So in Germany, we have a system of a dual, we call it dual system, means we are in a company and at the same time, you are also going to school. For example, 3 days per week, you go to your company when you become, for example, let's say a butcher. And then 2 days in this week, you also have the theory in school, and the whole program then takes 2 years or 3 years. You already get a small salary. And in Germany, we have this system for a long time, and people say it's quite successful because people have then a profession at the end. and you don't need to go to university. You can already start working. You get the really close experience how to work in your profession at the end.
And does it work? Is it what people think is a good system, and the economy in Germany is better than ours? Is it something that works?
I mean, maybe you also know that also the German economy, after a few years where it was very good, now also gets problems.
Yes.
It's energy crisis because of our car industry has problems in general, but our education system, when it comes about the apparently and the trainees, we have this works very well. And it also has, for a lot of young people, the unemployment is not too high.
Yes, it's interesting because I wonder about the value of a German education and how people view university graduates. Do those people have a greater social cachet? Do people look up to them more than people who've done a technical education? Because that's something that happens in our country. Does it happen in yours?
I wouldn't say so. I think they have a very good reputation also when you don't go to university and get another way your profession. And also you can even, in some programs, you can even do a master after you do this special program. You don't need to go to university, so it's almost like equal, like a bachelor degree.
Yes.
We have very flexible system in that way, because there are some jobs who need more theory. For example, when you want to become the owner of a company, or you want to go to a leading position in this company, and then you can also go to university. So you can even mix these both systems. And I wouldn't say that one has more reputation than the other one.
Thank you, Timo. That's really interesting, and thanks for joining us for a second evening. That's Timo Lehmann there, who's a reporter from Der Spiegel. You might think you're watching a repeat of this programme, but actually, honestly, another guest who was brilliant last night was Mariam Nakhuts-Rishvili, who is with me now. She was a 17-year-old student, but now she's an 18-year-old student. Is today your 18th birthday, Mariam?
Yes, it is.
Congratulations. A very happy birthday. Why are you not out, you know, sort of, I don't know, kissing someone questionable, lying in a ditch at 8:10 in the evening, instead talking to me on the telly?
Well, I'm just waiting until this is done.
Okay, then you'll do all that. Then you'll do all that. Right. What do you think of what you've heard from Andy Burnham today?
Yeah, well, I'd say I already do have a bit of a bias. I'm wanting to go to uni myself. This change, yes, I see where this is coming from. Yes, I do know that students don't really excel during those GCSE times and can't go into that higher education and want to get a job and an apprenticeship for that fact. But I think sometimes you get your consequences. You've also got people with those apprenticeships. Most of the time, they are connections and links through family members, friends. And I think that's what society is about, actually. With those connections, you get somewhere and you build yourself.
Can you just tell me about what your generation thinks of people who go to university, or people who do apprenticeships, or people who maybe get a manual job or do something else? Do people look down on people who don't go to university? Are people snobby about it?
I think it depends where you're looking at. In different areas, here it's a bit iffy. It's a bit of both. I personally think that it's not me being snobby, definitely not. But some people that I do know from secondary school that didn't work, that sat around, waited for their uncle to get them a job or whatever. That's on your consequences. That's what you kind of deserve in a way. But there's other things, other factors where it's like, yeah, some people can't sit at those exams, some people can't focus, and that's completely fine. And this is where like Andy Burnham's new kind of policy kind of fits in. But I don't think it should be as lenient as I'm hearing it to be.
So you're in a situation where you have a year left before you could potentially go to university?
Oh, I'm going in university in September.
Oh, in September, right, okay. Yes. And what are you going to be studying, and what are you going to be doing?
I'm going to be studying law at Uni of York.
Well done, Greg. That's a very prestigious course. I know you're in Sutton and Ashfield in Nottinghamshire. When you're in a situation where you see that families on universal credit are to receive £4,500 a year if someone takes up an apprenticeship, do you think that's a fair thing?
Like I said again, it does depend on the region. Here in Sutton and Ashfield, in Mansfield, in this area, I think it does kind of give a bonus to us. We are quite a deprived area. So I do think there needs to be exceptions, and there needs to be certain standards where these, like, this £4.5 comes in. But yeah, it's more of a standards, exceptions and regulations that I'm expecting to see.
Okay, well listen, have an amazing time at university, and have a lovely time this evening as well, and a very happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff. That is Mariam Nakashishvili, who is an 18-year-old student. Yesterday she was a 17-year-old student. She's her 18th birthday today. She's in Sutton-on-Ashfield and Nottinghamshire. Steve Mulholland is with me now, one of my favourite guests. He's the Chief Executive of the Construction Plantar Association. Steve, great to talk to you again. What do you make of all of this from Andy Burnham? Do you think he's got a plan?
He's got the right words, Peter. So there's some of this makes sense. It's the action and what actually happens on the back of it that will decide whether it makes a difference or not. From our point of view, Construction Plant Hire Association, we like to try and get kids in as young as 16, get them through apprenticeships, get them through skills boot camps. It's a great age to get them.
Do you think 14 is a better age? Do you think if you say to kids at 14, if you say, right, hold on a second, you're clearly not someone who wants to do English literature or French or geography or whatever, actually you might have a better future and maybe even earn more money going into the kind of jobs that you can provide and your industry can provide, Steve? Is 14 a better age?
So that's what I was leading on to, Peter. At 14 and 15 years old, if you can get them into the workplace with some sort of experience, getting work experience, that's something that DFE used to do back in the 1980s and very early 1990s. If they're doing technical courses at school in conjunction with this and T-levels for 2 years leading up to 16, or getting ready for T-levels at 16, that would absolutely be a benefit. Sorry, Peter.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you. Continue.
No. So that side of it will be a benefit. So let's just fast forward from now to 2 years. We've lost the expertise to a degree. They need to find these teachers and these assessors for delivering these courses. So we could potentially be looking at between 2 and 4 years before these kids are coming out with the work experience that's required in the workplace. Now that's all positive. We need the employers to have the workloads and pipelines of what to be able to engage with them.
Yes.
And it's the SME, it's the small employers and the self-employed guys that the government needs to be listening to.
But that's very
people
difficult.
Who can represent them.
But that's very difficult for them as well to know what the outlook is going to be in 2 or 3 years' time as well. Do you think people will be reluctant to engage with this? We've also heard a lot of this before. I mean, Philip Hammond in the 2017 budget says T-levels, technical education taught and administered, aim to put courses on equal footing with academic work. Boris Johnson saying in 2019 technical education is not given the respect it deserves. Rishi Sunak 2023, while you never hear me denigrate the aspiration to go to university, I don't think the way we currently measure success in education, the ambition to get 50% of kids to university, I don't think that's right for our times. Keir Starmer last year, we're putting technical education back where it belongs, not as a second thought, but as a first choice. We have heard a lot of this before. You said Andy Burnham had the words. Are you confident that he's going to have the deeds?
There's a lot of change. The change needs to start at DFE. DWP have now got control of the training budgets when they come out of school. So that there needs to be a lot of change there. They need to get their heads round about how the schools set their budgets with kids potentially leaving at 16 as opposed to staying at 18. So that's how the schools get their budgets. There's that problem there. The actual levies that are raised, Peter, there's billions of pounds raised in apprenticeship levies each year in the construction industry, with the extra funding that was promised a year ago, which still hasn't come to fruition. We're at almost £1 billion. It's not going direct to the people who are either delivering the training, the employers, I mean by that, who are helping with it, or they're helping aid the people get into training. What we could potentially see, because governments tend to be run by people who have been in further education, as they're so busy looking at further education and tech, they're not looking at the actual employers and how we can get them into the employers' workplace early and deliver these courses, because it's an improvement. As I said, it's the correct words. It's just there has to be a change of who they're speaking to and listening to at the coalface to understand what's required to get these kids to the skill levels that will get them accepted in the workplace.
And I wonder, whether you think there is a snobbery and how we get rid of that snobbery of saying, oh, you went to university, you must be an incredibly intelligent person. Oh, you're a plumber, you mustn't be an incredibly intelligent person. I mean, I just think that's all nonsense.
Peter, I think drawing the parallels with further and higher education is unfair. I don't think we need that, to be honest. Having left school at 16 to pursue an apprenticeship, what you're looking for at that age, certainly from a lot of the young people I speak to now we've just finished handing out 109 nominations and awards for apprenticeships in our sector alone, which is a phenomenal number for young people to achieve. And these kids, they want to go out and work. They want to earn money. They want to learn a skill. They want to have a career. Many want to work outside. They don't want to be stuck behind a desk. Once you get to a certain age in life, you're not actually that bothered whether you think it draws an academic parallel or not. What you do have is a life experience. You have skills that will do you forever that AI would really struggle to take over, which is one of the other things they like to talk about now. So I think that forcing the kids to learn from what I've read today, Peter, and I've had an incredibly busy day, so I'm not 100% up to speed, but there's mention of sciences and certain courses that they have to take as well as maths. Going into the apprenticeship world, in most cases, not all cases, but most cases, arithmetic would be much more, the simple fact of being able to add, subtract, divide percentages. That's the most important thing to carry into the workplace. You don't need, these kids don't want to be bogged down in doing higher education in really difficult subjects. They have a motivation to just get on and get stuff done and do stuff.
Yes. And Steve, I always think of someone I went to university with who went to a very good university, was really, 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 really good at physics. But, I mean, I was astonished that he could actually tie his shoelaces. I mean, that was really, practical skills, zero.
We're all wired differently, Peter, but I think certainly in my experience and the experience we see a lot of people going to university and doing courses that when they leave, they're not any good to them whatsoever. And hence the reason we have, that's just amplifying the problem that we have with NEETs, because you've got people leaving at 21, 22 years old and don't have the skills to carry on into the workplace.
Yeah. Steve, always worth listening to what you have to say. Really appreciate you joining us on the programme. Steve Mulholland there is the Chief Executive of the Construction Plant Hire Association. Let's hear a voice note from Craig. Craig has sent us a voice note. You can do this as well, 0344 499 1000 to send us a voice note the same way as you send it to anybody else. And Craig has this to say.
I'm pleased that Andrew Burnham is focusing on vocational skills and different pathways for children from school. I think that's great. The German model is something that we should be looking at. But incentivizing people with, payments for people who are on benefits to allow their kids to then go into a paid apprenticeship, I think is not right, because those people will be going into, or those young people will be going into paid apprenticeships. Surely their parents can then charge them board and lodgings, which is what happened to me when I left school and went to an apprenticeship. I paid my parents board and lodgings. That should go some way to covering the benefits that these families wouldn't be receiving. So why the families being given a double benefit of additional government support plus the child when they go into apprenticeship earning a salary? That doesn't seem fair to me. I think it needs a little bit of a rethink.
There will also be a lot of parents who don't charge anything for them, and that will be two-tier as well, because you'll have some people who say, well, give me some of your salary because they need it, and others who will say, oh no, we're well off enough, you just keep all the money you have, which is two-tier by itself. Really interesting points there, Craig. Thank you. Ernie says, hi Peter, on education, I think everyone should strive to get a job that fits in with what they enjoy doing, irrespective of the qualifications. If you need them, go for it. 75% of your life is spent working. If you don't enjoy your work, you're not going to enjoy 75% of your life. I knew I wanted to create beautiful things at an early age. I think most kids know what they want to do. So I went into construction and became a bricklayer and now a builder. And boy, have I created some beautiful homes over the years. There's nothing better than enjoying your work and looking forward to getting up in the morning and to go and do it. Ernie, I am in a very privileged position that I get up in the morning and I look forward to going to work. I work with great people. I have fantastic people who text me like you, Ernie. We're going to hear from some great callers in a second. I am just very, very lucky to do that. And when you have a job you enjoy, it doesn't feel really like work. Everyone moans no matter what job you have. You could be a multi-millionaire, you still have moans and gripes and all the rest of it. it. But I totally agree with you, and I think that you've got to do something that's your passion. I always got told off in school for talking, so that's sort of worked out okay for me, and I'm glad it has for you as well, Ernie. And whatever you do, it has to be something that you enjoy and that you can take pride in as well. I've worked for stations, I've worked for different journalistic organisations that I'm not proud of. I'm very, very proud of this one and the work we do. We'll take some calls in a second. If you want to get your voice on the air between now and 10 o'clock, or indeed even in the next section, give me a ring. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
She says I look like Andy Burnham.
Watch a little bit.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. Anne in Bournemouth is on the line. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Anne, I think it's perhaps the first time that we have spoken. You're very, very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
It's about the education, Peter. I'm so sick and tired of listening to all this nonsense about education. I'm 85 years old. When in the early 50s, we got the opportunity to sit for the grammar school, which I failed. The next year, when I was 12, we had the opportunity to sit for the girls' commercial school, not a college, not a polytechnic, not a university, a school, uniformed hours education.
Yeah.
We dropped 3 subjects, science, art and music.
So you went to the commercial school?
I went to the commercial school. I got through to that one.
And what did they teach you?
Now, on the 3 subjects we dropped, we had a normal education, and they put in shorthand, typing, commerce, and bookkeeping.
Yeah, all very useful skills.
At 15, I was fully qualified, ready for work. The local companies were absolutely begging the school to send us because I got 10 shillings extra for having my qualifications.
Excellent.
The boys came the same way. They went to the technical school for boys. They did their plumbing, their electric, their bricklaying, and their lathe turning. They were out at 15 working. Now, what's all this nonsense about being there till 18, wanting up thousands of pounds? I've got 2 grandchildren. They haven't gone to university. One at 29 has already got his own business in heating and air conditioning. My granddaughter's in Australia working for the government. What is wrong with these people? They can hardly write, read or anything. My sister's 90. She passed the exam for the grammar school. She was one of the first people in the land to bring in the old contometer before the computer. Absolutely brain box. We do the Times crossword over the phone every day. And I can't believe the nonsense I'm hearing about these poor, poor children. My father was in the army. He was a captain. He died at 49 with a massive heart attack. I was 7. The army immediately came in and said, on your way. Council wouldn't help us. There was 5 of us. They gave us a hut.
Do you know what it is, Anne? First of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your father and the experience after that. I'm delighted to hear about your grandson at 29. Big year for him with the old air conditioning. I should give him a call because I'm roosting these days, and the air conditioning never seems to work in the studio. But Anne, the interesting point, I suppose, with all of this is, do people just need to be a bit tougher? Do people need to stop whinging and just get on with it?
They have to have nothing. We were left with nothing when my father died, right? And a hut that we had no bathroom, no toilet, and everybody says these poor children have got no chance. Well, I'm sorry, just because you've got no money doesn't mean you don't have a brain. We had good teachers, we were disciplined, and I ended up, when I retired, as head of human resources in one of the big banks, and my sister ended up in the computer industry. We had nothing.
You both did very, very well. Do you think at the start of their careers, at 16, at 14, people are told, actually, there's so much you can't do? Should we stop making people feel like victims?
Why don't they put the technical side and the other side in at 12? We were 12 years old. The boys were called upon at times to go out if there was a leaking pipe in the building.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were there with it. So by the time we left, we had English, history, geography, the whole works. But we had this added bit that said we could go on and be PAs and secretaries and do whatever we wanted to do. Because
the economy's very different now, though, Anne, isn't it? I'm not disagreeing with a single word you're saying. I'm just saying that the skills that you learn, like shorthand, for example, I never had shorthand as a journalist. I wish I'd had it. But now I have an app on my phone that transcribes things in real time, so shorthand is of less use now.
I absolutely agree with you there, Peter. But my sister and I have gone through life without email, without a fancy phone. We can answer any question you throw at us. We can write good letters. We can spell. We're disciplined, and we're good people.
Yeah.
And we've never, ever, my grandchildren wouldn't even bring the button pressing things into the house.
Right.
So, no, there was a basket by the door.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is...
Well, lots more that we have to discuss this evening. Alison's been in touch and says, my friend's granddaughter has completed all her years of nursing training. She cannot get a nursing job in a hospital, and neither can the other nurses on her course. That's crazy, Alison. Absolutely crazy. Brian says that caller Anne could give Georgina in London a run for her money. Superb caller, so articulate and interesting. I love them. Give them their own show, says Brian in Belfast. Anne was superb. I would not like to have been called into an HR meeting with her, it must be said. Right then, I want to talk about what's going on internationally. Iran releasing this disturbing Kill Melania video threatening the First Lady and her son, Baron Trump. Let's have a little look at it. There are subtitles on it for people who are watching. We'll just play, 10, 15 seconds of it. I'll give you a sense of what it is, but this has been put out by the Iranian regime and it's being played by one of their news agencies. Let's see a clip of it here.
اسناد به کار رفته در این ویدیو حاصل استخراج اطلاعات از چند شبکه امنیتی ناشناس و تصاویر ماهواره‌ای است. تیم حفاظت ملانیا ترامپ مستقل از رئیس جمهور آمریکا عمل می‌کند. سرویس مخفی نیز برای او به جای رمز
So it's giving details of where Melania Trump is likely to be. There's an image at the start, just for people who are listening on the radio. As you know, some people listen to the radio, some people watch on telly. And there's a sort of blood-stained image, a dripping image of Melania Trump. Really disturbing stuff. An AI-generated fantasy of murdering the president's wife and threatening a teenage boy. I mean, that is just dreadful. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Roger McMillan. Roger is a counter-terrorism specialist, former director of security at Iran International TV. Hi, Roger.
Good evening.
Good to have you on the programme. What do you make of this? Really, really sinister.
It is sinister, it's horrific, and frankly, I'm glad you only showed a few seconds of it because it does not deserve the house room that they wanted to have. This is state-aligned media that is inciting the assassination of frankly, just a lady and her son. Putting them as a target. There's no ambiguity here, and what we've got to look at, there's no legitimate grievance that they can possibly have for all of this. There's no justification, and it should be treated with the absolute utmost contempt that it deserves. This is just AI slop, frankly, that they're trying to use and sort of put forward as some sort of power projection. It's just
they will say that there's strength there. Do you believe there's a level of strength in the audacity of this?
Well, I think you've got to look at who that level of strength is being pushed out to. Because if you think people in the West believe it, no, I don't think they do. But actually, this is a lot for the people back in Iran who are wanting to see a potentially fractured leadership showing the strength, showing that they can still try to bully the West, to try to bully the rest of the world through these tactics that they have. Putting billboards up of Melania Trump and Baron Trump and the rest of the Trump family is horrific, but it's not a new tactic. They did this with my own journalists when I was with Iran International Television just a few years ago. They used the same sort of harassment techniques, and this is again just to show their strength to their own people who don't have anything else.
Although presumably if you were actually going to attempt to attack these people, who are some of the most protected people in the world, it must be said, you would use the element of surprise. I just wonder if we could talk more broadly about the Iran war, because Netanyahu, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, was in the White House for the first meeting since the Middle East bombing campaign began. We know there have been differences in the approach of the approach of the Americans and Israel, although the objectives are largely the same. I just wonder what your assessment is of that meeting today.
That many videos done in camera, it's in private, we're not quite sure what's going to come out of it yet. But I think when we look at the objectives, Donald Trump perhaps has changed between at the beginning it was regime change, to the nuclear question, to reopening Straits of Hormuz. Netanyahu has been very firm in what he wants is the end of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the regime. And I think this is very important to note, because when you have the end of the Islamic Republic, you will not have the issues with the Strait of Hormuz. You will not have the nuclear issues. And also you will not have the problems that we currently face with the proxies, the Houthi, the Hezbollah, etc.
So does Trump not get that, or does he just have a different frame of reference and a different mindset when it comes to this? Because when I hear the three objectives of Israel, that Iran doesn't have ballistic missiles, it doesn't have nuclear weapons, and there is regime change. All of those are important to me. The third one, regime change, the most important, and I'm not sure the Americans are still as focused on that. What's your assessment?
I think at the beginning, when Donald Trump said, right back at the beginning, I think the 6th or 7th of January, he said, look, help is on its way. And that was a signal to the Iranian people that they perceived that America is going to do something. It's going to do something on the ground to support a regime change. What we've seen is a long bombing campaign since the 28th of February. It has decapitated a level of leadership, but we still haven't seen what is anything close to regime change. That said, the economic pressure that has been put on the regime in the last few months is to the point where actually their economy is struggling, is failing. But of course, that has a human impact, which we mustn't forget. And what we hear in all of this, the conversations, is regime change, Strait of Hormuz, price of oil, etc. What we are forgetting often is the plight of the people in Iran who have no voice at this table.
And interestingly, Vieira was actually sending me some information today about the people being lined up essentially for execution who have been opponents of their regime. We saw obviously in January there were about 30,000 people who the Iranian regime murdered, killed, executed, whatever you want to call it. We're in a situation now where there are more people who are in that situation that the regime are lining up essentially to execute. Is there anything that can be done about that?
So the executions go on. They are little reported in the Western media, but we need to remember that this happens almost on a daily basis. This morning in Isfahan, the cranes and the scaffolding were erected and 2 protesters were executed by the state at dawn this morning before their morning prayers. We need to be conscious of all of this, and we need to not let this particular story die. We must understand that the plight of the people of Iran continues. And again, the only way this is going to end, the only way this will end is with some form of regime change away from the brutal the theocracy, the IRGC controlled element that they have at the moment.
And you mentioned the IRGC. We've now prescribed them here in the UK. I think we need to prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood as well. Do you think, in your estimation, that the UK public, our viewers and listeners, really understand the depth of the Iranian threat to the UK, especially as now with Andy Burnham? He did a major U-turn, actually, which was not much commented on, it must be said, when he said that the Americans could use our bases for offensive strikes. I'm happy enough with that. But when it comes to Iran wanting to kill British people and British soldiers and airmen and all the rest of it, do you think people get that?
No, I don't think they do. Being quite simple about it, I don't think they do.
How do we get the message across?
I think what's been happening in certainly the last few weeks, certainly since people understand now that there's the threat from people on the small boats, but those are low-level criminals coming across. The people in this country, for example, who are still being sponsored on skilled worker visas, religious worker visas, and so on and so forth, to operate, whether it's charity shops, charity bookstores, the Islamic Centre for England, all of these other institutions. This is where we have a problem. And of course, many of the Iranian people have been here for many years, but we must separate. We mustn't conflate the two issues.
Of course.
They've got a huge number of Iranian people in the country who are wonderful
of course.
and just phenomenal society.
I actually spoke at one of their rallies about a week before the Iran war started. It was the biggest crowd I've ever spoken to, actually. There were tens of thousands of people there who are absolute patriots, who love this country and hate the Iranian regime, and they're patriots for Iran, a country they want to be free and at peace. It was a really interesting afternoon, and I wish them well. Roger, I really appreciate you coming into the studio. That's Roger McMillan there, who's a counter-terrorism specialist and a former director of security at Iran International Television. Whatever you think about what he says, let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk in just a second. I know some people had audio problems if you're watching or listening on YouTube. There were some audio problems with Chris Philp's interview a little bit earlier on. We're going to replay that. We did a quick phone interview with him, 3 or 4 minutes. We're going to replay that after the break, and then we're going to get the view of Linda Jubilee, one of my favourite contributors, who on the immigration plan, and specifically Andy Burnham says he's going to water it down. But Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, going through a very, very scary process today on a small boat, on a boat, looking at what's happening in the Channel, and then seeing live rounds shot by the French into the water. Stay with us here on Talk.
said...
To be here with you all in the heart of Manchester this Friday morning at the end of, you know, a fairly big week is just everything to me.
If I have to watch one more saccharine video of him pulling a pint or talking about his favourite bar snacks with John Healey, whatever mawkish, minimalising, utterly moronic, stupid bit of social media tidbit they're trying to throw to us, you know, the sugar to help the Marxist medicine go down.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Scott in Surrey. He says, you've got to love Anne from Bournemouth. I can't agree enough. People need to work hard in all aspects of life. I understand that life will be challenging at different points in time, but have some resilience to work through it. I'm not saying we as a nation shouldn't be there for others, but I simply don't believe that millions of people need the charity of government, says Scott. Thank you to Peter in Shrewsbury as well. He says, why isn't Burnham talking about immigration, net zero, cost of living, defence, rape gangs? He's trying to make himself popular rather than making the tough decisions to bring this country out of the gutter. Where do they think this is going to end? We cannot take any more illegal migrants. Stop the pull factor before it is too late. I must just apologise, we had a few gremlins in the system this evening. A few people lost sound a few minutes ago as well. We're going to try and bring you the Chris Philp interview before 9 if we can. We're trying to get that to you. Again, some gremlins in the system, but we'll see where we get to with that. But we know that Chris Philp, who is the Shadow Home Secretary, was on a little bit earlier on. If you're listening on the radio, you would have heard him and explain how he was on a boat today looking at what the French are doing, and then shots went off. A variety of gunshots went from a French naval vessel as well. Concurrently to that, Andy Burnham says he could water down Shabana Mahmood's plan to make migrants wait 10 years for permanent settlement. So there's a lot in this immigration-wise. Linda Jubilee is with me now, the broadcaster and journalist. Linda, let's talk about Chris Philp first. We do hope to bring you that video between now and 9. We'll see if we can do that. But Linda, what do you make of the fact that Chris Philp was there and those live shots were fired? Very, very worrying, sinister development, I would argue.
I don't know whether I would characterise it as sinister. As I understand the situation, the French have complied with all the international regulations in this matter, and they put out the appropriate signals. They also say that they regularly train their combatants, that is their people on board their boats, in small arms live exercise firing. And they did so within the gauge, that is the area that they are allowed to do so. So they are saying, and believe me, I don't often give the French the benefit of the doubt. In fact, not all that often at all. But the fact of the matter is they seem to be complying with the regulations. But what I do want to say is that the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, is out there with, I think, a Times reporters on board as well. Yeah. And they're sort of sauntering through the channel on this fishing vessel. And it seems to me a little bit amateurish. I mean, in my view, MPs have got to stop filling their Twitter feeds, their X feeds, with all these things.
But
like,
Linda, he's the Shadow Home Secretary and he's saying, not quite on the ground, quite literally on the sea, what's happening. I think it's far better in recess that parliamentarians get out of Parliament, see what they're actually talking about, see what's happening firsthand, and then have that first-hand knowledge rather than simply pontificating from Parliament.
I agree with you. And also, he is the Shadow Home Secretary. So in a sense, you know, he's got a limited amount that he can actually do. And this is one of the things he can do. But let's not forget, the Channel is not an easy stretch of water. We have just seen the Russians doing a live fire exercise. That's a big live fire exercise without any permission at all, which undoubtedly was intimidating because they didn't get a document. They didn't put it out. It's a particular particular kind of document, a NOTAM it's called, that warns everyone of activity across the channel. They did that 46 miles off the coast of Portsmouth, and it was very, very frightening. But actually, what I would say is going out on a fishing vessel into such a dangerous stretch of water is asking for trouble. I mean, it might be a controversial view, but all I can say is I've read all the way through the French statement on this, and they do seem to be complying with international regulations.
OK, an interesting take on that. On the wider issue, Shabana Mahmood is the Home Secretary still. She hasn't been moved in the reshuffle. I think that was a very good idea of Andy Burnham. I just wonder what he says. He says he wants to bring the Prime Minister a new pair of eyes to the row over the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's proposals, promising a fair resolution. Well, she's not a new pair of eyes. She's the same person. But when it comes down to the plan that would make migrants wait 10 years for permanent settlement, he told the BBC, we'll come to a fair resolution. I think the worry people have is the feeling it's out of control and we don't have a grip as a country and therefore we don't have the right procedures in place. Yet again, he does that wonderful politician's thing of diagnosing a problem without necessarily giving a solution. He's talking about reviewing things all the time. He's going to review the prisons policy and keeping people behind bars. And once again, more uncertainty in the system. What do you make of it?
Yeah, and I think, what's this expression, cast a new pair of eyes across it? It's not a new recipe for, you know, fruitcake. It's a really important piece of policy that has had many eyes across it for many months. And we know that this is where Shabana Mahmood wants it to go. Now, as I understand it, he may want to shorten the period of indefinite leave to remain. Shabana Mahmood wants people to be here for 10 years before they apply for indefinite leave to remain. He may want to shorten it back to 5 years, and he also wants to be softer or less tough, shall we say, on medical workers and care workers that enter our system. He doesn't want stringent rules to face them right now. But the fact of the matter is, successive governments have had literally years to solve this problem, and now we are at a place where we need to be relatively tough. We don't need a new pair of eyes on this. Enough eyes have seen it. We need to carry forward with what was the original plan. Otherwise, what was the point of leaving Shabana Mahmood in place?
It's interesting that social care is a big thing that Andy Burnham's been talking about as well. He said in that BBC interview last night that he wants to change the system. He wants to do as much as he can. Now the Telegraph newspaper is reporting, we've just seen this, Linda, that the Telegraph is saying that workers are facing a new tax to fund social care. Health officials have drawn up plans for a 1.8% levy on earnings to pay for Burnham's reforms. The new tax on income to fund social care among the plans drawn up by officials for Andy Burnham to consider in his first few weeks of office. We have the highest burden of taxation as a proportion of what the country makes since the Second World War. Are people going to stomach more taxes, or will they, if it actually sorts out social care?
Well, that is the question, but he is caught between a rock and a hard place. The fact of the matter is that the social care required in this country, particularly for the ageing population, as he said earlier in the week, the burden is so great that unless it is addressed right now, it will cause the collapse of the NHS. And I don't think he's exaggerating. I cannot see how we are going to find the money without cutting back on welfare, cutting back on a lot of things we don't want to cut back on, and we will have to increase tax as well. And we don't want to do that. But at the end of the day, we have to fund social care because it's coming towards us like a tsunami for everyone. Everyone is getting older. This is an ageing population and a mature economy. We have only limited options.
Linda, I've just been told that we do have that video of Chris Philp, and what happened a bit earlier on, and I just have to apologise for this, due to a technical error, people who were watching on YouTube couldn't hear him. People on the radio who were listening on the radio, so the majority of people watching or listening to the show could hear it, but we're just going to replay my conversation with Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, a little bit earlier on. I'll get Linda's reaction to it as well. This is how the conversation went.
Well, I was on the channel on a fishing boat observing the illegal immigration over the Channel and to investigate what the French were doing about it, which is not very much, even though Shabana Mahmoud is paying them £500 million of our money. And I was on the back of a fishing boat being interviewed by the BBC when a French warship approached our vessel extremely closely, just a couple of hundred metres away. And as it reached the closest point of transit, 17 shots were fired from the back of the French boat. We heard them very clearly. They were live rounds because we could see the impact of the bullets hitting the water. The shots were not fired either before or afterwards. They were just fired when the French warship was very close to our vessel. There was no warning at all, no warnings on the VHF radio, no indications that there was a live firing exercise going on. Our skipper said he'd never seen anything like it in 28 years on the Channel. So I don't accept the French explanation that it was a standard training exercise at all. I found it personally quite intimidating to have a French warship sail so close and firing 17 live rounds into the sea behind our boat.
Yeah, the French Defence Staff say French Navy units train regularly. Individual competent training is normal activity for a vessel in operations. The statutory signals required by international standards for this type of firing exercise were displayed and all safety protocols were followed. This exercise is unrelated to the presence of a British ship in the area, which was outside the range of the firing. The Flamant was not engaged in an operation to monitor migrant vessels. We also have a former senior border force official who has told The Guardian there are often exercises at sea involving the Royal or the French Navy. The shots are occasionally fired, usually using blanks. This may be nothing at all. What makes you convinced that they are in fact live rounds? And whether they were or whether they were not, you must have been pretty scared.
Well, they were not blanks. They were definitely live rounds because we could see the impact of the bullets on the water. So they were definitely not blanks. On the point about them claiming they were displaying all the relevant signs and signals on the French warship, that is not true. I saw the French statement saying that this afternoon. So I went back, I got the footage. In fact, it's on my Twitter account. If you look at the footage of the French warship, you will see there are no signs or pennants or flags or any sort of markings indicating that it's involved in a live firing exercise at all. So
yeah, and we should say we have that footage on the screen right now, Chris. Was it scary?
Yes, it was, actually. Hearing those shots ringing out, we did obviously, in the moment, you can't immediately tell where the shots are going. So it was a little bit unnerving. And it took a few moments to realise exactly what had happened. My first instinct, actually, was to try and carry on with the interview in a kind of professional way. But soon afterwards, a few minutes afterwards, I kind of realised how extraordinary it was that a French warship had come so close to our vessel unnecessarily. It didn't have to come that close. It chose to come that close, and that it chose to fire when it was at the closest point to our vessel as well.
That was my conversation with Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, a little bit earlier on. Linda, what do you make of what he said?
Well, as I said before, I mean, I appreciate that he has the job to do. It's a difficult job because he's in opposition, but you go into the Channel, you don't expect, it's not a boating pond, it is the English Channel, and it has attendant risks. Now, and you're going out there and you want to be filmed, you are being filmed, shots are being fired, that's fair enough. I mean, I've been under fire as a foreign correspondent. It is an unnerving experience, but what do you expect? I hope he's done well. I hope he's got a lot of publicity. I hope he's got a lot of views. But I don't believe that the French did anything wrong.
OK. Linda, I just want to show something else to you because we showed this in the last hour, but it's just an amazing video, I think. And Dee from Chesterfield has been in touch. I'll read out Dee's message in a second. This is Archie Goodburn. He finished 7th in the men's 50-metre breaststroke final at the Glasgow Commonwealth Games 2 years after he's been told he has incurable brain cancer. Let's hear from Archie.
My dream was to make the final, but, outside the pool, I dream, like, I have a future where brain cancer isn't the biggest killer of those under 40, and to come home where the UK government established a national brain cancer lead to make that change, and I knew that there was so much more I wanted. Much before that change is made and that dream is completed than any of my personal goals in the pool. If I gave up every single thing that I can, faced with every single hurdle. Because what families and young people are going through out there is really beyond the comprehension of many people out there, and certainly far harder than anything I've ever had to do as a world-class sportsman.
Archie Goodburn there. And Dee's been in touch from Chesterfield, who says the young swimming star is right about scans. In 1995, my GP noticed that my hearing had deteriorated. He sent me to the audiologist and turned out I had a brain tumour. I had surgery a month later. I recovered okay, but the lady in the next bed died during the operation. If my conscientious doctor had not been observant, I would have passed away within a year. Dee, thank you for that message. Linda, given you've heard what Dee said, given you've heard what Archie Goodburn, the swimmer, said, what do you think?
Well, what I think is he is quite right. We need to do far more scans on brain tumours. I've heard myself that it's a terrible situation for young people who suffer these kinds of malignant growths. But what an incredible young man. I mean, that is huge courage. Really, I feel, you know, quite overcome listening to him. I've got two sons. One's a bit older, but one's about his age. And I think when you look at a young person like that, doing something so brave and so selfless as to talk about other people who are worse off than he is. I mean, that's real humility and real compassion and real humanity. Well done him.
Thank you, Linda. Linda Jubilee, the broadcaster and journalist there, reacting to quite a number of stories. What do you think of what she said? 0344 499 1000. Also of what Chris Philp said too. I'd be very interested to your with your views on what he said now that hopefully you can all hear it. We're also talking about the health officials drawing up plans for a 1.8% levy on earnings to pay for Burnham's reforms. Loads of political stories around. David Whitting is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you very much to everybody who has been in touch. We've just been looking at a few tweets there during the break and really appreciate everybody getting in touch. We're going to talk to David Whitting. Wooders will be on the show in a second, former editor of the Sunday Express, on what Andy Burnham wants to do on education, on what Zia Youssef has said about Polanski, and that clip that has gone pretty viral actually from Michael Crick last night saying that I was overreacting to the fact that someone was wearing a t-shirt talking about guillotining Nigel Farage. That's the basis of a police complaint, and actually actually a complaint. We're going to talk to Reform later in the programme about this. There's a complaint in the London Assembly about it as well. Loads to discuss. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, please let me know your thoughts. Benefits as well, big story this evening. And indeed in the Telegraph, workers facing a new tax to fund social care. We'll talk to David Whitting about that too. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or send me a WhatsApp voice note, as I say, less than a minute if you would. You can also give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 10, and plenty more time for calls too. Stay with us here on Talk. Loads to discuss, as I say, and David in the Cotswolds says Burnham's policies in social care are a smokescreen. He would not dare reform benefits, so we will talk about regional devolution. To fund social care, he will end council tax and replace it with a property value tax and pass that money on to the devolved mayors he loves so much so they can spend it on what they want. We will end up with more tax, benefits will go unreformed, and we will all meant to feel grateful as he hung his hat on social care. We'll talk about social care in a minute, because the Telegraph is reporting that health officials have drawn up plans for a 1.8% levy on earnings to pay for Burnham's reforms. Another big story around today is about reforming education. Quite a number of people have talked about this previously. This is what Andy Burnham told one of our guests earlier on, Jimmy McLaughlin, who does a podcast called Jimmy's Jobs for the Future. This is what the Prime Minister told him.
We are only on week 2, but I wanted to get stuck into this straight away. I just don't feel we've got an education system that offers a path for everybody. It's focused on the university route, and that's great for those who want to go on that route. But there's a lot of young people who are looking for something different, and school often isn't giving them that something different. So it is a huge priority for me. And when you've been the mayor of a big city region like Greater Manchester, you just see how our economy can't function if you have an education system that doesn't, work to support all parts of the economy, get all young people engaged. So it's a passion of mine, and it's great to be in a position now to really pull the levers to fix it.
That is the Prime Minister speaking to Jimmy McLaughlin on his podcast, Jimmy's Jobs for the Future. There's another big story. We were talking about it last night on the programme. It's bled into today as well. Zia Youssef is the Home Affairs spokesman of Reform UK. He's released a video saying that he's not happy at all. Indeed, there's a police complaint. The Metropolitan Police are investigating the fact that Zach Polanski, who is the leader of the Green Party, on Instagram shared an image of a man wearing a T-shirt talking about guillotining Nigel Farage. Let's hear what Zia Youssef has said.
The leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, has posted to his Instagram a photo of a man calling for the beheading of Nigel Farage. This comes just over 2 weeks after our dear friend Anne Widdecombe was brutally murdered in her home in what the police say they believe to be a targeted attack.
Zia Youssef there. Well, I discussed this last night with Michael Crick, the biographer of Nigel Farage. He's written a book called One Party After Another about Nigel Farage. He thought I was overreacting to what was going on. That clip we put out on social media, and quite a number of people have reacted to it today. Let's just remind ourselves of that conversation. What do you make of this?
I think you're overreacting, Peter.
The leader of a political party, Michael.
Well, I know what it is. I know what it is.
Okay, why am I overreacting?
Well, in politics, people often use metaphors, refer to killing people off, or decapitation strategies. You remember in
the guillotine?
No, hang on. Well, we don't actually have. I doubt whether there is a single guillotine in this country, right? If it had been a knife or a gun, I mean, it is ill. You're right. It's tasteless. I wouldn't have done it. I certainly wouldn't have retweeted it or anything like that. And it is ill-judged. But we don't have guillotines in this country. It isn't a picture of Nigel Farage in the guillotine. I think what refers to is we're going to kill you politically. I mean, maybe I've got it wrong, but I do think that sometimes we do overreact to these things, and I can see why Farage has seized on it. And it's interesting that I don't think he's referred this gentleman on the screen or referred this incident to the police. Maybe he has. But I think we ought to put this in perspective. And there are some terrible things that people do on social media. But I think in the circumstances, I mean, if it was France, for instance, where they do have the guillotine, or they used to until quite recently, it might be a different matter. And if it was a knife or a gun, it would be a different matter,
Michael, I think you're completely wrong on this, and I think you've completely misjudged this. That was my conversation last night with Michael Crick, a Green Party spokesman, it should be said, saying that after attending a public event, Zach accepted a request to collaborate on a post with several images. Once this image was brought to his attention, he immediately unshared the post. He unequivocally does not support this type of dangerous message. Well, David Wooding is with me. He's the former editor of the Sunday Express. We're going to talk to Reform UK a little bit later on about this, David, but what's your instinct?
Well, yes, I'm all in favour of free speech, but as somebody once said, free speech doesn't allow you to shout fire in a crowded theatre. And in the same way, it doesn't allow you to incite violence. Now, the question on this one is whether it incites violence. The problem is we've had so many cases of police officers going round and knocking on people's doors for social media posts which are a fraction as violent show a fraction of the violence as this tweet that was shared by Zach Polanski.
Oh, David, are you there? I think we might have lost David Wooding there. We'll see if we can get him back, certainly. But it was interesting what Michael Crick was saying, and a number of people have been in touch today to talk about it, including Dominic, who says, if you're offended by a satirical cartoon on a T-shirt, I will rightly assume you're equally offended by the Charlie Hebdo cartoon you know we're both thinking of, or is satire a pendulum that swings one way? Dominic, fair challenge. Daza says, Peter, I began an apprenticeship with the RAF at 18, served 7 years, then started at the ground level in a company and worked my way to director in a business that now turns over more than $1 billion a year. Retired at 48, mentored kids, wrote a book, degree in common sense. Daza, what a life you have led. My goodness, that's superb. London Oil Trader says, why would a company hire an apprentice when they know the parents are getting £4,000 to not work? And Elle says, thank you for covering what you covered with Roger earlier on. He was a superb guest. I agree with that. Talking about Iran, of course. We have to keep this topic in the headlines. The world needs to wake up to the horrors facing ordinary Iranians. The sooner the regime falls, the better. So thanks to Elle for that. A couple of voice notes now on education and apprenticeships. Let's hear from Mike.
When I was leaving school at 15, every one of my friends went in to be an apprentice. Plumbers, heating engineers, electricians. I was an electrician. Absolutely loved it. Great feeling to have a pay packet, £3.17 and sixpence, my first one. We all grew up to buy our own houses, and we've all done well. None of us went to university. All, financially secure. We saved up for years to buy our own houses. No mobile phones, no holidays, no meals out. We sacrificed years and years and years to save up to buy our own houses. Being a tradesman all my life, I've made good money. I just feel that my son's nearly 40, when he came to work at 18, his friends were at university. They came out of uni, they had no job to go to. My son already owned his own house. So I'm glad that this has come forward. There's more apprenticeships. It's a great thing.
Thank you, Mike, and well done to you and your son, clearly both absolute grafters. Let's hear another voice note. We'll go back to David Wooding in a second, but I just want to hear from Kevin on education and apprenticeships as well.
I think it's a great idea. Just going back to where we was way back, we used to do that. But the incentives is an absolute disgrace. If you're going to give incentives out to anybody, it should be to the employers who are going to be taking on these young people for their apprenticeship. That way, they'll have a better chance of getting employment. My second point is on the higher education. I'm a firm believer that people who go into uni should pay for their fees and their courses. If you want to better yourself, if you want to give yourself a better chance of an education, better chance of employment, you need to pay for it. Any foreign students should get their loans for student accommodation and everything that they do over here from their countries, as should we if we want to go abroad.
So thank you to Kevin for that. We've got David back on the line, former editor of the Sunday Express, David Wooding. This is a big policy area for Andy Burnham, but is he just saying what a lot of people, a lot of political leaders have said previously? Do you detect there'll be a major shift here when it comes to apprenticeships and the what he says about giving the hard hat the same respect as we give the mortarboard?
well, he's tearing up the Tony Blair playbook here.
David, are you there? We can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, you cut out a second. I cut out.
I can hear you, David.
Yeah. He's tearing up the Tony Blair. He's tearing up.
Unfortunately, we're just having another problem with David Whitting there.
To be here with you all in the heart of Manchester this Friday morning at the end of, a fairly big week is just everything to me.
If I have to watch one more saccharine video of him pulling a pint or talking about his favourite bar snacks with John Healy, whatever mawkish, minimalising, utterly moronic, stupid bit of social media tidbit they're trying to throw to us, the sugar to help the Marxist medicine go down.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Third time lucky with David Whitting. David, what do you make of the apprenticeship stuff?
Yeah, good. Well, I need an apprenticeship in technology for how to link up with talkTV. If only I'd gone to a technical high school. Yes, I think it's a good idea. He's clearly, Andy Burnham is ripping up the Tony Blair policy, which I remember saying at the time was madness, trying to get half of all people into university. I didn't go to university. I went to a polytechnic, but they've all been turned into universities now. I went to a polytechnic because I wanted to learn a trade, which was journalism. Also because I wasn't from a very rich family, and I don't think I could afford to have 3 years out of work, 1 year in a journalism course, and then into a job. Again, we're short of all the skills. We've got enough graduates, people learning Mickey Mouse degrees, things like media studies, for example, courses about the music of the Beatles and God knows what. What we need is plumbers and builders and engineers and people who have great skills. And then we wouldn't have to import people from abroad to do it. And we wouldn't have so many people unemployed.
Tell me whether we've just heard all this before, because we've heard Philip Hammond say some stuff on it in 2017. We've heard Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson. Is this just reheated policy, or will this really be sweeping reform, do you think?
Well, it depends. I mean, the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and also in the detail of what Andy Burnham comes up with. But they have to be real apprenticeships, Peter. It's no good just saying people can take more apprenticeships. And there's this policy being announced of giving $4.5 grand to the parents of young people who go into study a skill that gives them an encouragement to let their kids go and do one of these jobs rather than keep them at home and get benefits for them. And it needs to be combined with what the requirement is in industry. It's got to be a properly thought through plan about how we fill the skills gap. And it's also, Peter, got to be coupled with sorting out the welfare system, because a lot of people aren't going to go into jobs if they get more by staying on the dole.
You're absolutely right. And actually, there's a story in the Telegraph tonight about health officials drawing up a plan for a 1.8% levy on earnings to pay for Burnham's social care reforms, another area of welfare and health that he wants to sort out. This is a new tax on income to fund social care among the plans drawn up by officials for Andy Burnham. We know that when there was a penny on income tax, now that was a percent, it wasn't 1 penny on income tax when Tony Blair had on national insurance, I think it was, for the NHS. That was actually a popular tax. But civil servants developing proposals that require workers to make mandatory contributions to a new privately managed fund to pay for their care in later life. Given the level of taxation, the huge burden of taxation on so many people who do work, what do you make of this? Will it be a goer? Will it be popular?
Well, we're all willing to pay more, but, you know, Andy Burnham's come out and said what the past 5 or 6 prime ministers have said, which is that we'll have to pay a little bit more. And I think most people are sick of paying a little bit more and not getting a little bit more in the way of services or standard of living. And the problem is, while money is being wasted on the asylum system and on welfare, which is bloated and going through the roof, people are not going to be willing to pay this sort of money. So that it comes with a rounded budget of, yes, paying a little bit more, but also cutting not just the waste, but the stuff that is hitting you in the face there, that needs to be sorted out. £334 billion a year on welfare. That's more than we pay for defence and God knows what. Yeah. And we've got to build our defence system.
Yeah, it's about 5 times more than we put on defence. Can I ask you as well about the Zach Polanski issue? We are going to be speaking to Reform UK about this in a few minutes' time. This issue about this tweet or this Instagram post that Zach Polanski put on. As I said at the start, I read out the statement from the Green Party saying that Zach Polanski, as soon as it was raised with him, managed to not share it any longer. Where do you think this goes, David? Do you think this is just something that, I mean, the police are investigating it as well, and we know that it's only a couple of weeks since Anne Widdecombe was murdered?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's most important that our elected representatives are protected, and anybody who is threatening them is not just making vile threats against a human being, but threatening the very fabric of our democracy, and it must be dealt with. The problem is that police have been knocking on people's doors about material which is much less offensive and much less violent than that particular tweet. So it's quite understandable. And I heard what Michael Crick said about, well, it's just a joke. And yes, maybe it was just a joke. But the fact is that the police have set the bar where it is on what is acceptable. And some tweets and some messages and some posts have been far less offensive and less violent than that. And so, yes, I can understand why it's been reported to the police.
Thank you very much, David Wooding there, who's the former Sunday Express editor. And David's been in touch and says on the website, the College of Policing, the Left So Love, states all allegations of incitement must be referred to the Central Special Crime and Counter-Terrorism Division of the Crown Prosecution Service. I assume Polanski has been referred to this division. Thought not. Well, we don't know, David. We do know the Metropolitan Police are investigating anyway. Jill in Cornwall has some thoughts on this matter. Jill, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, I didn't agree with a lot of what he said, I'm afraid. Michael, I can't think of his surname now, but I know you were talking to him. Yeah, I just didn't agree with a lot of what he said. You know, I mean, how would he have felt if it had been that on that chap's T-shirt and it was aimed at him? You know, I mean, the thing is, we've had a situation where we've had a political person, Anne Widdecombe, she's been murdered. She hasn't been accidentally knocked over, she's been murdered. And it looks like her views and everything may have had.
Well, we just want to be really careful, Jill, because there is ongoing legal action about that. But I know emotions on this are absolutely running high. What is absolutely clear is that Anne Whitcomb was murdered, Joe Cox, Sir David Amos, go back further, you've got Erie, Navy and Gow, others as well, Jill, and we need to be really careful what we say and what we put on social media.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Don't apologise. Don't apologise. Absolutely fine.
I just feel that, we put a woman in prison for a couple of years because she put something on the internet which was, well, offensive, if you want to say, and she spent time in prison. This bloke's walking around with it on his T-shirt, and knowing how things are deteriorating in this country when it comes to how politicians are viewed and their views and their policies that they're pushing for, you can't have a situation where someone's walking around with something on their T-shirt that sort of suggests that someone be murdered, because there'll be some idiot that will see this, and it will touch home, and he could end up doing what this bloke with a T-shirt is suggesting is done. And Nigel Farage, I think, unfortunately, no, not unfortunately, his views appeal to so many people in this country. The people in this country are sick of so many things and the way things are turning out. And Nigel Farage has got the courage to stand up and say sometimes what the people of this country are thinking.
I think a lot of people feel the same way, Jill. And listen, thanks for your call. I really appreciate it. That's Jill in Cornwall there. Penny says, Polanski should be arrested for that picture with Nigel Farage. Totally disgraceful, especially after what happened to the brilliant Anne Whitcomb. As for Crick, thinking it was okay for Polanski to put that dreadful picture up, of course he knew. What idiot would take the risk of not checking first? He's totally unfit to stand for any party apart from one called the Cretin Party. Unbelievable, says Penny. Can I just say, as I said last night, Michael Crick is a friend of mine. He's been a colleague for 15 years. I respect his opinion, even if I disagree with it. I don't think he's a bad person. I just think, as I said in that clip, that he got it wrong and that his opinion is wrong. And we're not going to demonise him as some people have on social media. It's fine to disagree with people, but let's do so without being disagreeable. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi Cardi P, it's not just technical skills. Teenagers were forced into university for things previously not university based. An example is nursing. Nursing was studied at colleges and they worked in lower jobs at nursing while studying. They got paid as well. Joanna, that is a brilliant point, an absolutely brilliant point. I actually worked at a summer job in the health service for 2 summers when I was a student. There's really good people in that office. And I was astonished. There were people who had a 3-year degree who could come in and do it basically immediately after the degree. And then there were people who had experience, a bit of experience, a couple of years at a lower level, who could do it. And I thought, but the people who did the degree had essentially wasted money to do the same job, and we've had university courses for jobs that haven't needed to be done previously. That's a very, very good example with nursing, so thank you for that. Fran from West Sussex says, regarding the young people in your show, they're really impressive people. I work for a company based in Germany, and I've seen how their work ethic while studying has been, so thank you for that. And Gary says, an earlier texter spoke about the difficulty in finding an employer willing to offer apprenticeships. Well, I have a solution. When you're doing an apprenticeship, you're getting an education in a skill or trade. So if students can take out student loans to get their academic education at university, why not introduce a system of apprenticeship loans so those wanting to do an apprenticeship can pay employers to train them and support themselves while serving that apprenticeship? I would wager a tidy sum that all of those people who complete an apprenticeship would be in a better position to pay back all of their loan, and a lot quicker than many students who graduate with worthless academic qualifications. Very interesting, counterintuitive thought there, Gary, something I hadn't thought of before. Tommy's in West Lothian and he's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Tommy, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to talk about Andy Burnham's apprenticeship.
What do you think? Is he on the right track, Tommy?
Well, he is on the right track. I served my apprenticeship as an electrician, and I'm 55 and I'm still an electrician, and I've made a very good living out of that.
I'm delighted to hear it, Tommy.
Yeah, I still enjoy it. I wasn't.
You still got the spark?
I've got the spark, I like it.
Glad to hear it. So what would you say to a young person who's maybe 15 or 16 thinking, do you know what, geography, not for me, home economics, not for me, French, not for me. But tell you something, there's Tommy. He makes a good living. He enjoys his job. Maybe I should become a spark. What would you say to them? And what would you say to Andy Burnham? How can he get it right to get the right people into the job you do? You'll hopefully retire in 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it is, and you'll want to see the next generation coming through.
I would say absolutely go for it. It's a good trade. You'll make good money, and yes, sometimes you'll be out in the cold and the nonsense weather. But you take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
But essentially, I mean, most of my friends, 1987, I started my apprenticeship, and I think I was about the only one of my friends that took an apprenticeship at that point, because university and college was a big hitter at that time, and they were all academically more clever than I was. I wasn't a studier, but I soon learned that to be an electrician, my God, I had to study, and I'm still doing it now.
Well, it's different skills, isn't it? And you're still learning to this day. So do you think Andy Burnham's on the right track? Would that maybe even encourage you to vote for him?
I would never vote for Labour. He is on the right track, he's got the right idea, but as everyone keeps saying, where on earth is this money coming from to support this? And where is the industry you're going to put these apprentices into? I mean, previous governments, not just Labour, but the Tories as well, have just completely shattered. I mean, there is still a lot of production, there's still a lot of maintenance jobs you can get there in factories, but nothing to the degree of what it was.
Yes.
Even the 70s and the 80s, we don't have the same manufacturing. Where are we going to put all these?
Well, I suppose in theory, if they build 1.5 million homes, Tommy, there'll be plenty of need for people like you. But it's a lot of what if, and it's a lot of where does the money come from. Really, really good points there. Thank you for them. That's Tommy in West Lothian there. Andy Burnham apparently has said that football does not belong to investors, and the World Cup was never anyone's to sell after FIFA confirmed plans to set up a private company to run its competitions. Writing on Twitter, the Prime Minister said, let me say this very directly, football does not belong to investors, it belongs to the people who fill the stands and who stand on the touchline week in, week out, rain or shine. The World Cup is not a product, it is the greatest competition in world sport, and it is never anyone's to sell. Dress the deal up however you like. Once you've sold a piece of it, you've sold out. Football belongs to the fans. It always has, and it always will, says the Prime Minister. Thank you to Dan, who says, you had a caller on today who had 2 grandsons or nephews with ADHD who were in the creative field. I don't have any work for them now, though would be more than happy to look at their show reels, give them advice. I use a lot of freelancers, so maybe able to give them some paid work for their portfolios in the future. He's given us his email and his website. I have 1 or 2 work experience kids here every year and have a full grasp of how difficult it is breaking into the creative industry. You'll have to excuse a few videos not working, as my creating a sci-fi series has been the last of my troubles, and Dan's given us his details there. So if those people or the caller earlier on gets in touch again, we'll be very happy to pass on those details. Phil in Portsmouth says, what we need to do is stop giving away foreign aid. As the saying goes, charity starts at home. We have enough of our own problems to worry about what's going on abroad. George says, as an ex-military man, I don't know the full details of the incident. This is what Chris Philp was talking about earlier on. But whether there are military exercises or not, no army goes ahead without taking into account the people in the area before they start using live ammunition. Ernie says, if a French warship is patrolling the area where the politician was observing the dinghies, why don't they pick up the migrants? I think maritime law says they should, instead of our border force. I'm sure it could be argued in the ECHR court. And Sally says, hi Peter, my lovely sunny mum was diagnosed with a stage 4 Satsuma-sized brain tumour in 2023 at the age of 76 after experiencing stroke-like symptoms. Within 3 months, she passed away after becoming bedbound, doubly incontinent, unable to speak or feed herself. She'd experienced several breathing and panic attack symptoms over the years prior, and we had tests and scans of everywhere except her head. If only she'd had the opportunity, maybe the tumour would have been worth treating. Sadly, she was too late. I cannot imagine younger people having to go through this and would hope early scanning would be made available. My heart goes out to Archie. Sally, thank you for sharing your story. My mother is almost exactly that age. She's 77, and I don't even want to think about anything like that happening to her, so it must have been very, very difficult for you, and thank you for sharing your story. It's not an easy thing to do, to text in a story as personal as that to a national programme. I really appreciate you doing so, and I'm sending a big hug through the airwaves to you. Stay with us. We'll talk to Reform UK in a second about this Polanski row. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you, everybody who has been in touch. Debbie says it makes no odds about recourse to claim. Migrants are now declaring they're Irish because even though they're EU, they're able to claim benefits. I work in a job centre at the lowest level. It's my job to check identity. I don't know what an Irish passport looks like. It's an absolute joke in the benefit system. No one is properly trained. There are no special departments that we know of to contact. Gary says, who's that naive individual you had in the studio who seems to think that the French government is our partner in trying to stop illegal immigrants from crossing the Channel? If they wanted to do that, then they could just agree to take back every illegal migrant that arrives here on the next available ferry. The migrants would then just immediately stop coming because that would be the point. But the French government doesn't do that because the truth is the French have no interest in stopping them. In fact, they want to send as many here as they possibly can get away with because they don't want them in our country any more than we want them in ours. Thank you to Gary for that. Should say that in about an hour's time I will be on Times Radio, which is also part of our programme. I obviously want you to stay with Talk and to stay with Petri Hoskin, who we'll talk to a little bit later on. She's here between 10 and 1, but on Times Radio I'm doing a paper review tonight, as I do every Tuesday night. I will be on with their presenter Carol Walker at 10:30. So if you want to tune into that, you're very welcome to do so, or you can catch up online with me, or indeed with Petri, or indeed with this show. So Times Radio, 10:30, paper review I'll be taking part in, just down the corridor from us. They're part of the same group. Petri will talk to you as well in a little bit later on in the programme about what's coming up on her show between 10 and 1 as well. One thing we talked about last night, and I've just had such a response to it, we absolutely have to talk about it tonight, especially because in the London Assembly, Reform UK, who we'll speak to in a second, want Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party, to be censured by the London Assembly for sharing a post about Nigel Farage. This was a man in a T-shirt. We can perhaps see it on the screen in a second, and it's a man wearing a black T-shirt. There's a guillotine on the T-shirt, and it talks about making plans for Nigel. Now, Zach Polanski shared this on Instagram. He's now deleted it. We know that Nigel Farage is very unhappy about it. It's been reported to police. The Metropolitan Police are investigating. Zia Youssef, who is the Home Affairs spokesman of Reform UK, talked about this earlier today in a video. This is what he said.
The leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, has posted to his Instagram a photo of a man calling for the beheading of Nigel Farage. This comes just over 2 weeks after our dear friend Anne Widdecombe was brutally murdered in her home in what the police say they believe to be a targeted attack.
That is Zia Youssef there, the Home Affairs spokesman for Reform UK. I had quite the discussion with Michael Crick last night, who's the biographer of Nigel Farage. Michael Crick has written a book called One Party After Another. He said I was overreacting to this T-shirt and this post being shared. Let's just remind ourselves of that conversation. What do you make of this?
I think you're overreacting, Peter.
The leader of a political party, Michael.
Well, I know what it is. I know what it is.
Okay, why am I overreacting?
Well, in politics, people often use metaphors, refer to killing people off, or decapitation strategies. You remember in
the guillotine.
No, hang on. Well, we don't actually have... I doubt whether there is a single guillotine in this country, right? If it had been a knife or a gun, I mean, it is ill... You're right. It's tasteless. I wouldn't have done it. I certainly wouldn't have retweeted it or anything like that. And it is ill-judged. But we don't have guillotines in this country. It isn't a picture of Nigel Farage in the guillotine. I think what it refers to is we're going to kill you politically. I mean, maybe I've got it wrong, but I do think that sometimes we do overreact to these things, and I can see why Farage has seized on it. And it's interesting that I don't think he's referred this gentleman on the screen or referred this incident to the police. Maybe he has. But I think we ought to put this in perspective. And there are some terrible things that people do on social media. But I think in the circumstances, I mean, if it was France, for instance, where they do have the guillotine, or they used to until quite recently, it might be a different matter. And if it was a knife or a gun, it would be a different matter,
Michael, I think you're completely wrong on this, and I think you've completely misjudged this. A spokesman for the Metropolitan Police said on Monday the 27th of July, that's yesterday, we received a third-party report relating to an image shared on social media. We take reports of this matter extremely seriously and of this nature extremely seriously, and officers are conducting inquiries into the matter. We approached the Green Party last night, and they said after attending a public event, Zach accepted a request to collaborate on a post with several images. Once this image was brought to his attention, he immediately unshared the post. He unequivocally does not support this type of dangerous message. Well, Alex Wilson is with us now. He's a member of the London Assembly for Reform UK. Alex, you have another plan when it comes to the London Assembly on this. What are you doing?
Yeah, good evening. Well, we've seen the image that was shared, and it was very much something that he shared rather than being tagged in, and that's important to get that right, because he would have seen and consented to sharing that image. And so what we've asked is, well, as Assembly members, we are bound by a code of conduct, and we have to abide by that. So I have submitted, along with my Assembly colleague Keith Prince, a formal complaint to the Assembly's monitoring officer, arguing that in sharing this hateful post, then Zach Polanski has broken the code of conduct. He's bringing his role and the Assembly into disrepute, and we want that to be investigated. And at the same time, I've also emailed the leader of the Green Group on the London Assembly, Caroline Russell, and asked that she consider suspending the whip from Zach while this is investigated. I think that's the very minimum that can be done. It was a very, very hateful post. We live in a context where Nigel gets hundreds of threats every month, obviously some of them more serious than others. And we saw only 2 weeks ago what happened to Anne Widdecombe. So we do live in a context where there is the threat of political violence. And so for somebody to be glorifying that or making a joke of it or whatever they're doing with that particular image, it's completely wrong and needs to be called out for it.
The Green Party have said that once it was brought to his attention, he immediately unshared it. He does not support this type of dangerous message. Could this be cock-up rather than conspiracy? Is he really sharing something and happy that a guillotine be used and this offensive message be put out and dangerous message be put out?
Well, I think you need to understand what the Green Party is about these days. It's no longer a bunch of hippies tugging trees and wanting to save the planet. They are a party that is driven very much, or large parts of it are driven by hate, particularly anti-Semitism. It's a party that had dozens of candidates in the local elections that had to be investigated or suspended for anti-Semitism. Even just tonight, Hackney Council is in the process of de-twinning with Haifa, which is the Israeli city that's the best example of Jewish and Arab cooperation and integration together. It's not a happy place, the Green Party.
I mean, Reform UK, you've had your own vetting issues as well. You've had some people saying some really horrible things who've had to be suspended or resign from your party.
Yeah, absolutely, and that comes up when we throw them out, as we should do. But it pales into insignificance with what's going on in the Greens. But back to this particular thing, I think whether he shared it in jest or in seriousness, he made a conscious decision to share that post, and it's only right that it should be investigated. He deleted it shortly afterwards, but then so did Lucy Connolly, and she spent a year and a half or so in prison. So
is this a police matter, do you think? Is this a police matter?
It should be a question of consistency, and if tweets that or social media posts from people on the right are investigated by the police and face consequence, then so they should on the equivalent side on the left. I mean, ideally, we wouldn't be in a situation where words on social media get dragged up by the police. But what we want is consistency, and that's why it's been reported to the police. But table. What I'm trying to do is get the Assembly monitoring officer to look at this and pass some sort of judgment. And until such time as that investigation is complete, to say I've asked the leader of the Green Group on the Assembly to withdraw the whip from Zach, because these kind of thing cannot go on. It's not appropriate. Only about a month or so ago, we had a motion, a debate in the Assembly that was marking 10 years since the brutal murder of Joe Cox, and in unanimously agreeing that motion, which was actually proposed by a Green member in the, who tabled it, in unanimously agreeing that motion, we all renounced political violence in all its circumstances. So for just a few weeks later, this to be happening, when Zach was very much part of that debate.
And I totally get that, and there are some very good sentiments around that. I just wonder about the criminal aspect of it, the fact that it's been referred to the Metropolitan Police, because if you're saying, Lucy Connolly shouldn't have gone to prison, she deleted the tweet, for example, she was sent to prison for something that she shouldn't have been sent to prison for, I mean, you're essentially saying as a party that you would like some form of criminal sanction to be put on Zach Polanski for something that he, like Lucy Connolly, deleted, and he says he didn't mean. Isn't that just the same thing?
I think it's worth him being investigated. We'll see what happens next, but it's about consistency.
But what do you want to happen? Do you want him to go to prison?
I want him to be investigated. I want him to apologise, which he hasn't done. He hasn't even apologised, I don't think, for it yet. And I want the Greens to be held up for what they are, which is a party that many of them are driven by hate, and this is just one example of that. OK,
he should say he's deleted the post, and we've read out the statement a couple of times. You've presumably seen the story about Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, and what happened in the Channel with what appear to be live rounds. What do you make of that, Alex?
Well, it's pretty shocking, isn't it? I mean, we see that the French Navy or whatever won't do anything to stop the boats, but they will threaten an elected politician from another country. It seems quite bizarre when I saw that happening. But I think Chris Philp is himself quite late to the party. Nigel has been going out in the Channel for the last 3 years, highlighting what's been going on the small boat crisis. But no, it's not acceptable for a supposed ally of ours to be what looks like an intimidating use of their military force. Speaking of
Nigel Farage, he's been perhaps a bit more quiet recently. Can we expect him to see him on the shores soon, or is he lying low because of the controversy over George Cottrell?
Well, he's very busy at the moment in his constituency. He's there, all the time, knocking on doors at the moment. So we don't have
nearly as many press conferences from him. We don't hear nearly as much from him. Obviously, there's the by-election on at the moment. But is he shying away from the cameras, do you think?
No, not at all. Nigel's never one to shy away from the cameras. Yeah, we all know that. Yeah, let's get Clacton out the way, and then you'll see him bigger than ever. I'm sure of that.
OK, Alex, thank you. That is Alex Wilson there, who's a member of the London Assembly for Reform UK on that Polanski row. What do you make of it? 0344 499 1000. We'll take some calls after the break. Stay with us here on Talk.
So the full list of candidates for the Clacton by-election: Joseph 77, the Independent; Adam Akatip, the Forward Party; Count Binface, the Count Binface Party; Nick the Incredible Flying Brick, the Official Monster Raving Loony Party; Tony Kane's an independent. Woke Trump Kazi is an independent. William Stewart James Clouston is the Social Democratic Party candidate. Rhys Cowan, an independent. Glenn Charles Cummings, an independent. Martin Davis, the Freedom Alliance Real People, Real Alternative. Andy Earlam's an independent. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK Party. Atiye Fards, an independent. Lawrence Fox for the Reclaim Party. Tony Francis is an independent. Robin Green, an independent. Abby Hookway, an independent. Howling Lord Hope, the Official Monster Raving Loony Party. Stephen Richard Ingram is an independent, as is Amy Morris. Derek Norbert Morris is an independent. Michael Noel O'Keefe, an independent. Martin O'Brien, an independent. Nick Pellis, an independent. And Ketanar Kumar Pipiaya is the UK Voice Safer and Stronger UK Party. Daniel Pocock's an independent. James Ransley, the Consensus Party candidate. Jerry Smith is an independent. Kai Stevens for the British Democrats. John Stevens for rejoin the EU. Baron von Thunderclap for the Official Monster Raving Loony Party. Pamela Walford is an independent. Marcus White, Everyone is God Party. And Mark Wilkinson for the Independents.
to be here with you all in the heart of Manchester this Friday morning at the end of, you know, a fairly big week. Is just everything to me.
If I have to watch one more saccharine video of him pulling a pint or talking about his favourite bar snacks with John Healey, whatever mawkish, minimalising, utterly moronic, stupid bit of social media tidbit they're trying to throw to us, you know, the sugar to help the Marxist medicine go down.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sarah Jane Davies has been in touch on Twitter and says, surely the Metropolitan Police and the Crown Prosecution Service have no option but to bring charges against Zach Polanski. His sharing of a vile, repulsive post was far worse than what Lucy Connolly was charged with and imprisoned for. We cannot have double standards, she says. Tony in Warrington says, hello Peter, regarding Zach, if the police came out to say Lucy Connolly shouldn't have been imprisoned for tweets, then fair enough. But they haven't. Reform UK are therefore calling for equality of action from the police. I think they're right. That being said, there should be no prison for tweets until the authorities decide, then left and right should be treated the same. Zach deserves some harsh punishment. He should not get away with it. Let's get the perspective of Daniel in Gillingham. He has given me a ring from Kent on 0344 499 1000. Daniel, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, hello there, Cardi P.
Hello there.
First of all, I want to say there is no reason and no justification for death threats. Yep. I want to make that clear.
Totally agree.
Yeah. However, reform fought for Lucy Connolly's freedom of speech.
Yep.
She even spoke at a reform conference.
I think she'll be a reform candidate. I wouldn't be surprised if she's a reform candidate in the next election.
Exactly. So now what they're trying to do is say that another person is not allowed free speech.
I put a version of that to Alex Wilson. I don't know if you saw him being talked about. And Alex, I don't think, was quite clear about whether he wanted criminal sanction. Because if there's a police investigation, fair enough. And you're absolutely right. Death threats, always wrong. Nigel Farage, hundreds a week. You know, he's one of the most reviled and threatened people in this country. When it comes to free speech and when it comes to what people want to express, I do think you have a bit of a point there when it comes to Reform UK.
What I'm saying is for credibility.
Okay.
For credibility, Reform now need to distance themselves from Lucy Connolly. Otherwise, what they're doing is condoning it and then saying that it can't be done.
Very interesting point there from Daniel. Thank you for it. That was Daniel in Gillingham. Let me read out a couple more messages. Barry says, why is it that the number of welfare, welfare budget is mentioned under station? It's never mentioned that a huge lump of that goes to pensions. To listen to talk people, you think it's all going on the feckless and shirkers. Yes, but it is still the welfare budget. I'm absolutely not against people getting pensions. Of course they should, but 334 billion is unsustainable. I'm sorry. Gary says, not only should Zach Polanski face the music over his Instagram post, so should the individual wearing the T-shirt and the company that printed the image on it, because I'm pretty sure that by putting that offensive and threatening message on the T-shirt, they've broken the law as defined in the Malicious Communications Act. Lovely message from Leslie. I'm not going to read out, but thank you, Leslie. Very much appreciated. Alex in Cardiff says, big hugs to the last caller who was on there. I'm losing my 80-year-old mother to vascular dementia and seeing her deteriorate day by day. My mum hasn't got long left. It's been a hard year for me personally, but I'm not sure how to deal with emotions brought up. So sad. I've scanned earlier They could have caught the cancer, but the athlete brought me joy earlier. But cancer, Alzheimer's, so cruel. I pray for speedy cures soon, as we all do. Alex, and thank you for your message. Sue says it is incitement to violence against an individual, so of course it is a police matter. Ernie says, hi Peter, to finish on a good note, remember when I told you my mate went on trial because he had blood cancer, leukemia, and chemo was no longer having any effect, and his results on our trial, not on trial, on our trial, his results came back as having no cancer cells anywhere in his body, but he had to wait 5 weeks for another test. Well, I'm so pleased to tell you that his latest test also proved negative. There are no cancer cells in him, and he looks well. Sadly, only 13 of the 49 that went on the trial also had good results, but what a fantastic bit of hope that the scientists are doing such great things and give everyone some hope that we can beat this dreadful condition in the future. Ernie, that is fantastic news. My very, very best wishes to you and your friend May. You both have long, productive and happy lives. Anthony says Andy's policy for training young people to learn trades sounds fine, but who's going to train them? I'm a decorator with 50 years experience. I would love to pass on the knowledge and skills that I have, but it will be handed to some hedge fund company and nothing will happen but more debt. Alison is in County Antrim and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Alison, what do you make of what's going on? I know your daughter is starting university in Belfast.
Yeah. Good evening, Peter.
Good
first
evening.
Of all.
Hi, Alison.
Yeah, she's 19. She's starting University of Ulster.
Great university, yeah.
Up in Belfast as an undergraduate. So she's received distinctions on all her courses at further education.
Brilliant.
Tech, as we would call it over here.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of just concerned at the rate of pace of how AI is progressing. How is her own actual potential going to keep on a par or parallel with or be affected by it?
Yes. And I think you will know, as will your daughter, that there's so many jobs in design, for example, that people are just doing with AI these days, and they're doing it very easily with things like ChatGPT and Claude and all the rest of them, where they can just mock these things up very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think she's going to have to go down like the bespoke route, and maybe do things like ceramics or maybe even sculpting. Now, I know sculpting is probably a little bit different insofar as it requires a lot of time and patience and focus. She is doing illustration, so like her first semester is like painting, fashion, and graphics, ceramics.
She's got to learn all those skills, I suppose, Alison. It's so hard to know what the right path for your children is. You want them to have the best start in life. You want them to have a job. You want them to be happy. I mean, you're so supportive, and you clearly have a very good parenting style. The thing, all I would say is, I remember, I was in university. My first year was not a happy year. And I was thinking, I was wondering whether to drop out at one point, and my mother wrote me a letter and said, I don't care if you have a degree from this university, and I don't care if you become a bin man, we'll be proud of you. So the best thing to do, I think anyway, is just keep supporting your daughter, and the path will become clear. Yeah,
I mean, I thought she might do history because I know you did a degree in history, didn't you?
Yeah, history and politics. I loved it, but the thing with history is, you can always keep it up. You can always read and learn. And I would say I've probably done even more history than I since you leaving university than I was there. Alison, I wish you and your daughter all the best. When does she start? September or October time?
Yeah, I think it's mid-September, actually, Peter.
Great. OK, well, I wish her all the best, and thank you for your call. That's Alison in County Antrim there, and a great message from Dave in New Zealand, who says the Monster Raving Loony Party have two candidates in the Clacton by-election. Are they trying to split the lunatic vote? Pedri Hoskin is here, looking resplendent in a top I haven't seen before. It's a sort of purple, sort of pink.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, it's really, all the boys are going, that's a nice... I mean, even for boys to notice, it's extraordinary.
I know. We never notice anything.
Never notice anything.
Yeah.
What I have noticed, though...
Sorry, someone has just said in my ear it looks a bit like a vape.
That's a bit. I'll take that.
Goodness me.
Do you... do some nefarious dealing on the side?
Nefarious dealing?
Yeah.
Two phones. Drug dealer.
drug dealer. So
No. I can get you some good stuff. I'm only joking. My stuff's actually not that good. Hey, enough about my broadcasting. What's coming up in your show?
What's coming up? Obviously, we're going to be talking about education, but I want to find out what the children actually want. Now, I don't know if anybody's going to ask them.
We had an 18-year-old on, but we need to ask them, don't we?
We need to ask them what would make the difference for them to get into work. 'Cause it's all very well all these adults saying, well, we think this and we think that, but has anybody asked them?
Well, we had a really good person on earlier who said, hold on a second here. This is, they're doing it, they're not asking the employers either, saying, do the jobs exist?
Yeah, do the jobs exist? And do the young people want to do those jobs?
Yes, and will they exist in 3 years or 2 years or 3 years? If a business takes on an apprentice, will they have a job for them in 2 or 3 years, or are they just training them?
There's so many questions, aren't there? And we're just not getting the answers, we're just getting ideas. Vibes.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. I want to talk about Trump and Zelensky because I still can't get out of my head that terrible 2025 meeting in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if Trump thinks that Zelensky's holding a few more cards now, which I think he does.